We know a cat that can really do the cool jerk. Do 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 do. We know a cat that can really do the cool jerk. Do do do. This cat I'm talking about, I wonder who could it be? 'Cause I know I'm the heftiest cat you ever did see. When you see me walking down the street, then I better wanna meet. You can do the cool jerk. Woo! Cool jerk. Do do do. Do do cool jerk.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrinasalvati.
Despite the catastrophic death toll it has inflicted, Israel is losing on the ground and in the court of public opinion. There's no way that this ends that doesn't leave Israel a pariah state with occupation and apartheid on borrowed time, and they know it. So they're doing everything they can. Desperate acts of aggression to provoke a wider conflict with Lebanon, with Iran, with anybody, to draw in the US, to save them from the consequences of their own actions. And as Yemen shows, Butcher Biden is reporting for duty. With Europe's proud genocide by his side, they are the ones who have enabled the continuation of Israeli terror. Without them, it would already be over. So take note, Butcher Biden. The ancestors of the Ireland that you claim to be from disown you. Keep our country out of your mouth. And as for von der Leyen and genocidal Germany, with your words and deeds supporting Israel in the ICJ, not in our name. The people of Europe stand with Palestine and with South Africa.
Keep our country name out of your mouth. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursday for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. That was the phenomenal Claire Daly sending a very strong message to Joe Biden about Israel and Gaza. And you heard it here first, folks. She said, keep our country name out of your mouth. Kudos to Claire. She's a real one. She is a real one. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, and Twitter. And welcome back, guys. It's been quite a minute. I saw you guys Friday night. I'm still getting over this cold, but I feel much, much better than I did when you saw me Friday night. So I'm still dealing with the cough, but I don't have the headache. I don't have the body aches anymore. I don't have the chills, like that kind of thing. So feeling up to the discussions tonight, and we will do call in tonight as well. So it'll be great to hear from all of you guys over there as well. So let's go ahead and without further ado, give shout outs to people in the chat, and then we will jump right in. There are a lot of comments. Shout out to CBC Voters, says, happy Tuesday, Sabby Sabs. What's going on? P. Smith, who's a Sabby member, says, I hope you're feeling better. I am. Shout out to Miguel, says, peace. What's going on, David? Be careful, Sabby. My brother's girlfriend's mom used to work for the CIA. She's now going to write a tell-all book, but she's got the numbers. So if I attacked her, I'm never going to tell her anything. Interesting. Shout out to Camilla, says, stop NWO. Greetings. Focus says the U.S. to deploy 1,500 more troops to Iraq and Syria. It's a damn shame. It's such a shame. Shout out to Lawrence, who is a Sabby member, says Shaka when the walls fell. Greetings to my comrade JB, says hello everyone. Glad you're feeling better, Sabs. Everyone make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe. Congrats on 70K. Forehead kisses to all. Yes, and thank you so much for that, JB. When I talked to JB a couple of days ago, he told me I sound like that woman on Bob's Burgers, the teacher that's like, what are you guys doing over here? Like my voice was, oh man, it was bad. It was bad. Shout out to Kimmy, says, hello, Miss Sabby and fellow Sabsters from New Jersey. Shout out to SP, says Shy from Philly. Hello, Sabby. Greetings. Sean says JB is in the house. If you love JB and Sabby, give JB a woot woot. Shout out to Larez. Hi, Sab, Eric, and Sabby fam. For MLK Day at work, instead of his co-opted lines, I said MLK's words about doing something special for Black people because of their special mistreatment got awkward. All got awkward or looked away. I'm sure. Shout out to New Year, New Sheep, says, bah. Greetings, Silver Surfer, says, happy Tuesday, Sabs. Happy Taco Tuesday. You know I love my tacos. Silver Surfer knows I love tacos, okay? That is something I could have. I don't have it every day. I actually don't have it as often, but that is something I could have every day and not get tired of it. Love the taco. Shout out to Terry, says, hello, Sabby and chat. Happy Tuesday. Greetings, Hannah, says, let's go. What's going on? ACAB, who's a Sabby member, says, hello, everyone. Shout out to Volvo, says, hello to Cookie, says, hey, Cookie. Shout out to Shade Out. Shade Out. I have been watching British shows for the past couple of weeks. So I don't know what's happening, but I'm catching myself saying things a little bit differently. What's going on? Sebastian says, I love how mainstream media did a surprise Pikachu face when Trump won the Iowa caucus. Yeah, that was really interesting, huh? They were really surprised. Shout out to Cool Blue, says, good evening, Sabrina. What's going on? Randy says, hello, love. Shout out to Ravina, who's a Sabby member, says hello to Gamer. Gamer, you're always popular. Gamer says hello to Larez. Shout out to Dwayne, who's a Sabby member, says howdy, y'all. Howdy. Shout out to Eric, who's a Sabby member, says, hey, hi, here we go. Hi ho, off the way we go. What's going on? Welch's Grape says hi. And shout out to Suzanne Murphy, says hi there. Greetings, Mo Question, says huge show tonight. That's right. We do have a lot to discuss. Greetings, Lyle, says Sabby. And shout out to Mastermind, who's a Sabby member, says the 158 billion we've given Israel since 1948 doesn't include the 2 trillion that went missing when someone attacked the Pentagon. Interesting. And shout out to Red, says hello, Sabby. Greetings, Nikki World, says hi, everyone. What is going on? Unacceptable views? I think that's views. I love the intro to this show. LOL. Thank you. I'm actually going to have a new intro video coming soon. Hopefully, same theme, same song, but we're going to change some of the videos up there because there have been newer people that have been on here that are not featured. Shout out to Both Parties Are Traitors, says, please hit the thumbs. All right, let's go ahead and give a shout out to Sabby patrons, and we will go ahead and get started. And I'm laughing a little bit. This is why I'm smiling, because I have this song. I've had that song in my head. I showed this video on Twitter. It came across my timeline or my Twitter feed. I'm mixing up Facebook with Twitter. And it's this song called The Nitty Gritty, which I had never heard before. And it's a video of people dancing at the Judy Garland show. And they're doing this dance called The Nitty Gritty. And I didn't know whether, I'm like, look, I don't know if they're doing like some type of robotics or whatever, but the women were doing this dance in heels. I wish I could show it on here, but I can't because of copyright. But the women were dancing in heels and they're bouncing all around and their neck is moving back and forth. And someone told me they got whiplash just like watching the video. But that song is stuck in my head. Like all I hear is the nitty gritty, up, on down, gonna do the nitty gritty, the nitty gritty. Sorry, it's in my head. Anyway, shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies, and of course, members. All of their names are mentioned here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a special shout out to new Sabby patrons. Let's give it up for Bobby Flournoy, Michelle McConnell, and Nathaniel W. Martin. Thank you so much. You guys are keeping the lights on around here. Peeps. I get that nitty gritty song out of my head. The nitty gritty. You the nitty gritty. Okay, what are we talking about tonight, ladies and gentlemen? It is not going to be the nitty gritty, but listen to that song when you get a chance. I think you might like it. I'll play that clip on call-in actually, so you guys can hear it. Anyway, tonight we are discussing Bernie Sanders begs. What is he begging you to do? We're also going to discuss, if you have not seen this, Cornel West and Jill Stein had pretty epic speeches over the weekend at the pro-Palestine march in DC. We're going to talk a little bit about that march, which was absolutely extraordinary. The numbers, the turnout, the people who were there, the speeches, phenomenal. We're also going to discuss Charlamagne the God fail. You know, Charlamagne the God said some words a couple of days ago about Joe Biden, and now it appears he is starting to cave to the demands of the Democratic Party. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to discuss, if you have not heard by now, Donald Trump has actually just won the Iowa caucus for the GOP primary. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about what happened with Vivek Ramaswamy after that result. And we're also going to discuss, now this is going to be an interesting one, the MLK myth. Yesterday was MLK's birthday holiday, and honey, some of the comments from people, the blatant hypocrisy, people trying to misquote MLK and people trying to twist his words, we're going to break that down tonight. I'm going to tell you what MLK actually stood for, since people want to try to whitewash the history of MLK. But those are the stories for tonight, guys. The nitty gritty. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our first story. The MLK myth. You know, there's this misconception that when we talk about MLK, oftentimes people that are in the spotlight, so to speak, they talk about him the same way that school textbooks spoke about MLK. They whitewash his legacy. They mention positions that MLK had that the status quo finds acceptable. But they leave out positions that MLK had that are also even more important and go further than I have a dream. And we're going to talk about that tonight. And first, we're going to talk about some of the hypocrisy. We're going to point out some of the people that decided to talk about MLK's holiday as if they have the nerve to do so. So first up on the list is Joe Biden. I want you to hear what Joe Biden said on MLK Day.
Which Dr. King led, and I quote, he said his goal was to redeem the soul of America. In his sermon to the march in Washington, Dr. King called on all America to live up to the full meaning and promise of our Declaration of Independence. But here we stand with Dr. King to show out of struggle, there's progress. Out of despair, there's hope. From the promise of equality and opportunity, of jobs, justice, and freedom,
We're just going to pause it right there. He talks about equality, opportunity, justice, freedom, and jobs. Okay. Let's talk about equality for just a second in reference to Joe Biden, right? Because a lot of times people want to point to the fact and say Joe Biden was Obama's VP. Joe Biden selected a Black woman to be his VP. That has nothing to do with who Joe Biden is as a person, the type of legislation that he implemented, even when he was senator, and what he actually stood for. Because let's go there. This is the same guy. You can still find the picture car with racist segregationists co-writing the crime bill with Strom Thurmond, racist Strom Thurmond. He has the nerve to talk about equality and justice and freedom. This is the same guy after thousands of people were out in the street demanding some type of police reform or defunding the police. This is the same guy who decided we're going to give more money to the police, but he wants to talk about justice and freedom. The same guy who said he didn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle. That guy. This guy. And he sits up here on this high horse. Let's talk about the goodness of MLK and the soul of this country. MLK would not approve of the things that Joe Biden has done during his career as a politician. This is the same guy who pointed to Anita Hill, pointed to a Black woman right in her face, talked down to her when she was trying to explain to people what Clarence Thomas did to her. Same guy who refused to let her witnesses testify. Do you think MLK would have been okay with that? Do you think MLK would have been okay with Joe Biden's crime bills? Do you think he would have approved of some of the statements that Joe Biden has made about Black people? I don't think he would have. But this is the hypocrisy.
We see Black excellence, American excellence, Black history as American history, and a defining source of the might of this nation. It's Dr. King.
So it's the pandering, right? It's the pandering, because you can sit up here and you can quote MLK and you can say all the great things that you feel MLK did, but your actions speak louder. MLK would have referred to Joe Biden as a warmonger and a segregationist. Let's just keep it real. We'll go on. There's more. The Israel account. This one was probably one of the worst ones. Just a Thought said, sorry, what? So they quoted MLK and they said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Martin Luther King Jr. This is coming from the Israel account. The state of Israel. The same state that has referred to Palestinian people as being animals. The same state that is that has said that Palestinian kids are the children of the dark. The same state of Israel that sterilized Ethiopian women against their will. They have the audacity to sit up here and quote MLK. There's more. I told you, people showed their whole ass yesterday. Probably one of my favorite ones was the FBI. The FBI. This MLK Day, the FBI honors one of the most prominent leaders in civil rights movement and reaffirms its commitment to Dr. King's legacy of fairness and equal justice for all. This is the FBI. Now, see, even Community Notes picked up on this. The FBI engaged in surveillance of King, attempted to discredit him, and used manipulation tactics to influence him to stop organizing. King's family believed the FBI was responsible for his death. They killed this man. it's just the hypocrisy of it all. That's what just drives me crazy. They don't realize the times that we live in today where you can easily just pull up things on social media or the internet. And then there was this one. Secretary Anthony Blinken. Because you see, he said, today, we honor Dr. Martin Luther King and the lasting impact of his legacy. He dedicated his life to pursuing a dream of a world with more justice, equality, and freedom, the very core of our American values. This is coming from Secretary Anthony Blinken. Now, call me crazy, but MLK was anti-war. MLK was anti-capitalist. MLK was pro-reparations, which oftentimes a lot of people don't bring that up. Before MLK was assassinated, he was trying to unite the workers in Alabama, trying to unite the workers. So he was pro-union. He was also pro-universal basic income. You see, all these people that I've shown you, they're not going to mention these things because that doesn't fit the status quo. That doesn't fit their agenda. And that's definitely not what either party wants you to know about. But the nerve of Anthony Blinken, of all people. So I don't think I've ever received a tweet that received this many likes. It got 47,000 likes. I retweeted this and I said, keep MLK name out your mouth while bombing children in Gaza. Keep the name out your mouth. Just keep it. Because there are a lot of people right now on the interwebs yesterday, all the Zionists coming in saying MLK was pro-Zionist. Is that true? Is it really true that MLK was a Zionist? We're going to show you something in a minute. But all these people are just, just stop. Keep MLK's name out your mouth if you are pro-genocide, if you are pro-war, if you're actively aiding in the conflict abroad, if you refuse to call for a ceasefire, keep MLK's name out your mouth, okay, Anthony Blinken? Because I don't think MLK will be okay with you dropping bombs all across the world. Just stop it. Stop it. The audacity of it all. How dare you shout out MLK's name and you're talking about justice and equality, and you are working hand in hand with an oppressor, the state of Israel, to completely eradicate the Palestinian people. That's not equality. That's not justice. That's not a core American value that he refers to so much. It's a hot mess. A hot mess. But it gets worse. Because you see, apparently, there was also an interview with RFK Jr. where he is now defending his father's involvement for wiretapping MLK. I kid you not. Let's see it's all over the place, honey. It was all over the place yesterday. RFK Jr. defends Kennedy administration for wiretapping MLK Jr. I can't believe I even have to say this, but it's a hot mess. Independent 2024 candidate RFK came out in defense of his family's authorization, of wiretapping of MLK in the 1960s, saying politically they had to do it. The day before MLK Day, Mr. Kennedy told Politico that his father, then Attorney General RFK, and his uncle, then President JFK, allowed the FBI to listen in on King because they were making big bets on King, particularly in organizing the March on Washington. They were betting not only the civil rights movement, but their own careers, he continued. Mr. Kennedy said that his family knew the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, was out to ruin King, and that Hoover told the Kennedys that the civil rights leader had ties to communism. My father gave permission to Hoover. Listen to this again now. My father gave permission to Hoover to wiretap them so he could prove that his suspicions about King were either right or wrong. I think politically they had to do it. Despite acknowledging this, his family understood Hoover to be a racist and left no doubt where he stood on civil rights. He contested that President Kennedy would have fired Hoover in his second term had he survived to see it. Now, that's his belief. That's his guess. But my thing is, why not fire him during his first term? President Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. Mr. Kennedy also told the outlet that he believed his uncle had privately warned King about the wiretaps. Again, he does not know. He's assuming. Like when I tell you yesterday was a complete clown show, it was a complete clown show. Now, Cornel West actually called this out. He said, "My dear brother, RFK Jr., RFK is dead wrong in his defense of his father and uncle viciously wiretapping the great MLK Jr. This is COINTELPRO repression that includes threats and attacks of the Black freedom movement was despicable. Let us not, in retrospect, minimize its massive damage in these struggles for human dignity and freedom." Because, it's wild. It is a straight up clown show. We had Michael Rappaport. He's going around telling everybody MLK was a Zionist. They all over the place, guys. Cancel this Zionist today. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a Zionist, and there's no doubt he would be canceled if he were alive today. So listen to this, guys. And I'm going to show you something that Michael is leaving out.
The world must see that Israel must exist and has the right to exist and is one of the great outposts of democracy in the world.
My Jewish brothers and sisters said to me amid anti-Semitism anywhere, "We don't need your support. We have enough Jewish power to deal with this problem ourselves." I would still take a stand against anti-Semitism because it's wrong, it's unjust, and it's evil. If my Catholic brothers and sisters said to me amid bigotry toward Catholics, "We don't need your support in this because we have enough Catholic power to deal with it," I would still take a stand against bigotry toward Catholics because it is wrong, it is evil, and it is unjust.
So that's what he's using as his defense, that he believes that MLK was a Zionist. Let me show you what he's leaving out, though. This gentleman said it so well. Now, to be fair, will I say that MLK was as radical when it came to Gaza as Malcolm X? No. Malcolm X was obviously more radical when it came to that issue. But people are taking these little short clips of what MLK said and they're leaving out the context, which I think is incredibly important. And I think it's really important that you understand a couple of things that were happening at that point in time as well. Number one, did we have the power of the Israeli lobby back then the way it is today? No, we did not. Remember, during that same time, we talked about this before, that JFK did not share the same position on Israel that a lot of the Zionists do today. He was worried that Zionism was going to become what it has become today. So you do have to remember things were different at that point in time. And just because you have that clip of MLK saying that he felt like Israel had a right to exist, he was talking about Israel's borders. He wasn't talking about oh, that the West Bank and Gaza, that the Palestinians should be removed. He never agreed with that. And this is what they leave out. And they also leave out this important point as well. What happened when MLK was supposed to go to Israel and give a speech, and why that did not happen? And this part right here is incredibly important. This gentleman here said, misquoting Martin and Malcolm. Listen to this. This is very important because he breaks this down.
MLK embraced Israel. Does BLM embrace Hamas?
Israel has a right to exist.
MLK would be turning over in his grave right now. I wonder what MLK would think. Okay, let's talk about it. It's the summer of 1967, and Martin Luther King Jr. is scheduled to take thousands of African Americans, Black people, to Israel for a tour of the Holy Land. But something catastrophic happens that complicates the entire plan. People love to use MLK to fit whatever agenda they have at the moment. But we don't have to guess where he stands. He speaks for himself. I have the transcript from an interview that MLK did on national TV in 1967 that rarely gets talked about. But first, some context. This trip to Israel was going to be huge. Records indicate that he planned to preach a sermon from the Mount of Olives, the place where Jesus ascended into heaven. He plans to pray with thousands of people at the region's holy sites in Jerusalem and Galilee. This was going to be his Moses moment, taking Black people to the promised land. But the problem is that just a few weeks before, Israel launched a preemptive attack against the pro-Palestine alliance of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, starting what became known as the Six-Day War, which killed around 800 Israelis and about 18,000 Arabs.
See, even back then, when we talk about the casualties, there were always more. When we talk about the amount of Arabs that were killed, you had like 18,000 here, and I think he said like 800 Israelis. The casualties were always higher on the side, on the Arab side.
In less than a week. It also fundamentally changed the map. Israel expanded its borders, gaining about 4 times the land it had before, capturing Jerusalem and establishing military occupation in the Gaza Strip. Even though the war was over in just 6 days, MLK will cancel his trip. And this war will mark a turning point in King's nuanced position on Israel. Here's the statement. The interviewer asks MLK, should Israel, in your opinion, give back the land she has taken in conflict?
Pay attention to this, because see, this is the piece that they're leaving out.
And here's part of MLK's response. I think for the ultimate peace and security of the situation, it will probably be necessary for Israel to give up this conquered territory, because to hold on to it will only exacerbate the tensions and deepen the bitterness of the Arabs.
But Michael Rappaport isn't going to tell you that part. There were a number of Zionists yesterday, all up and down my Twitter feed, leaving this out. They won't tell you that, though.
This moment offers profound insight into what King believed was necessary to achieve peace between Israel and Palestine. King's name and legacy are thrown around carelessly to justify all kinds of things, but in this instance, we don't have to guess what he thought.
And something else I want to show you as well, in reference to that interview that he's referring to. Pull this up, because I actually added that here. Yeah, I included that in that thread. The Washington Post covered that interview. The Washington Post covered that interview, and they posted that yesterday on MLK's birthday. So when it came to Israel and Gaza, again, like I said, Malcolm X obviously was further to the left than MLK was about that particular issue. But for all the Zionists that are on Twitter trying to make it seem like MLK was a Zionist, all this kind of stuff, they are leaving out an important, what I feel is an important interview that he felt it would be best for Israel to give up that territory. But they're not telling you that part. We have to pay attention. We have to pay attention. And you'll hear all these people the women on The View, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, all of these pundits on mainstream media brag about MLK's legacy, and everybody mentions the I Have a Dream speech, but they don't tell you about some of these other speeches that MLK had. They don't tell you that MLK was calling for cash reparations. They don't want to bring that up. Doesn't fit with the status quo. They don't want to tell you that MLK was anti-war. He would not approve of these wars. They don't want to tell you that MLK was trying to unite the workers, to unify the workers. You see, when MLK was just focused on uniting people based on race, that was one thing. But the moment that MLK started to talk about economic issues in this country, he started to talk about the class struggle and uniting people in reference to class as well, then they killed him. This is the part that a lot of people leave out. We have to be sure to show up and tell people the truth. Let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Trash Panda. Thank you for the super chat, Flower Bro. Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia's presidential campaign is being heavily censored on Meta. I'm not surprised. Thank you for platforming the Party for Socialism and Liberation, Sabby. Would love to hear more from Claudia and Karina. Yes, Claudia has been on this show. I've interviewed Claudia. Thank you for the super chat, Louise. Hi, I'm a YouTube member, but is it better money-wise to be a Patreon? It's all up to you. I mean, both platforms take a percentage. I'm just going to keep it real. Patreon takes a percentage. YouTube takes a percentage. So it's all about what works best for you, to be honest. Thank you for the super chat, David. Hypocrites quoting MLK make me sick. He was one of my ideological heroes, along with George Carlin and Vash, the Stampede. Love and peace. Thank you, Nexus Games. MLK would not be okay with only helping an extremely small portion of African Americans either. That's true. You're right about that. Thank you for the super chat, Jay. MLK would have been disappointed with and protested against every president post 1968. Thank you, Varsity Sports. I liked Michael better as Remy. At least you saw him coming a mile away. This is a special stupid. Thank you for the super chat as well. Imagine a bully beating you up every day. Then you hit him back and he says, I have a right to exist. SMDH. Thank you for the super chat. Social emotional learning with Dr. Donnie. MLK was a CIA op, like Gandhi, slept with a lot of white bookers, siphoned off more radical, violent action. We need a Malcolm X or Black Power Day. And this is one of the things that I did disagree with MLK about was I get it that he wanted peace, but how many times were activists supposed to go out into the streets, get their heads bashed in before they said enough was enough? You know, and they were being peaceful and they still were beaten up by the police. They had dogs sicked on them. People had crosses burned in their yards still. That's the thing with me, where I feel like Malcolm X was a little bit more, he got it. Now, Malcolm X's position changed later on too, but Malcolm X was like, nah, bruh, we're not going out there in the streets and getting knocked in the head all the time and just going to sing Kumbaya. Nelson says, thanks, Sabby, not seeing these interviews with MLK. Yeah, see, they don't want you to know a lot of this stuff. Interesting. Rondo says MLK got hit in the head with a brick. It was his Christian sensibilities. Interesting. Speaking of sensibilities, we're moving on into this story about the Iowa caucus for the GOP primary. Now, last night was a little crazy. It was a little crazy because I feel like mainstream media was shocked that Donald Trump actually won the Iowa caucus. I don't know why they were surprised. I don't know where they've been. I think that they really believe that all of the criminal allegations against Dr. Trump and all of the smearing from mainstream media was actually going to affect voter turnout for Donald Trump, but that did not. And honestly, not only did he win the caucus, but it was a huge win because of the amount that he won by. Donald Trump won over 51% of the vote in Iowa. And it's not like it was just him and another person. You have him, you have Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, you had Vivek Ramaswamy. We'll get into that about him as well. Some people were still voting for Aisha Hutchinson, which is weird. I don't know what that was all about. But that's a significant win. And I want you to hear how MSNBC in particular was talking about this race in Iowa before it was announced that Donald Trump won, because I told you guys before, the Democrats really do want Nikki Haley to win. They want her to win. And I really believe that they would be okay if Nikki Haley actually won the whole thing instead of Joe Biden. Because again, she's still status quo. She supports the military industrial complex. She's a freaking neocon. They like those types. Let's get started with this clip here. This was a round table of sorts. You have Jen Psaki, Rachel Maddow, Emoji Boy is there. You know, the usual pundits. Listen to the way they talk about this. It's really interesting.
Also very different voters, because with immigration being the top issue for Iowa voters, Nikki Haley doesn't represent what they're looking for.
Sure.
So she's going to take a turn here, and think about all the classic Republicans, the business set. You know where they are tonight? In Davos, Switzerland, at the World Economic Forum. And when they hear the people who overwhelmingly supported Donald Trump are anti-immigrant, they're certainly not. They're certainly looking for comprehensive immigration reform. We have a huge labor shortage in this country.
Did you catch what she just said? They're looking for comprehensive immigration reform. We have a huge labor shortage in this country. She's saying it out in the open, people. She's saying it out in the open. We need to fix this immigration issue so we can put them to work.
And so there's a big portion of classic Republicans that are scratching their heads.
But they're
now.
not the majority of the electorate, though.
Right. Correct.
That's the thing. Of the Republican electorate. They may be the majority of the overall electorate.
Well, in New Hampshire, the other thing that helps in New Hampshire, obviously, is that it is an open primary, right? I mean, the caucuses are technically open. You can come and register that night, but New Hampshire is fully open for independents to come and vote. And we've seen that vote carry people that might perform differently than Iowa. Nikki Haley has that obviously going for her. A huge part of the issue here, when we talk about Trump's dominance.
Like, listen to the way that they talk about Nikki Haley. Like, they are actually for this woman.
The Republican Party. One of the things I think we don't talk about enough is that he's just chased a lot of people out. Like, there's a bunch of Romney voters who just watch MSNBC all day now and vote like Democrats, like straight line. Like, there's everyone. Like, there's tons of those people. So those voters are not in there in the caucus anymore.
I mean, it's not like the Republican Party isn't competitive in the national polling right now, and NBC's national polling right now. Trump is beating Biden.
Oh no.
Let's pause here for just a second. Is it true that Donald Trump has driven a lot of Republicans out of the party? Because, see, I don't think that that's true. I think that's a myth. And his win last night should tell people something. I think that's exaggerated. Do I think that some Republicans, weren't feeling Donald Trump and afterwards they were just like, okay, this party is moving in a direction that I don't approve of. And maybe some of them may have left the Republican Party. Sure. But I wouldn't say that most of them have. I don't think he's driven most of them away. And I would also say that Donald Trump still has a strong base. And MSNBC and CNN have been trying to convince people, and Fox News was doing this for a while too, when it was decided that Ron DeSantis was going to be the candidate that they were going to push, right? According to Rupert Murdoch. They were doing this for a while too, which was to make it seem like Trump didn't have a strong base anymore. Trump still has a strong base. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of these independents actually come out in support of Donald Trump because of the way the Democratic Party went after him, because of everything that the Democratic Party and mainstream media have tried to do to prevent him from being a candidate in this race in the first damn place. They've actually helped Trump. He wouldn't have won as largely as he did in Iowa. I really believe this. Had it not been for all the interference from the Democratic Party and mainstream media, making it very clear that they're trying to make it so that he cannot participate at all. They actually helped him. And I warned people about this back in the days when the first indictment came through, and then another one, and another one. And I said, you're actually helping Trump in the polls. He continued to increase as this went on. Donald Trump was not beating Joe Biden in the polls before the indictments. Everything that the Democratic Party has done to try to convince the American people that Donald Trump should not be the GOP nominee and you should not support him has actually helped Donald Trump. They made him look like a martyr. I warned people about this.
I'm not saying anything about the competitors. I just mean the kind of person who considers himself a Republican has been changed by Trump enough that some of the votes that would be needed for a Nikki Haley, for instance, are not there because they're not Republicans anymore. So like that makes the math a lot harder.
I think if you're the campaign, if you're running the campaigns for Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, you each have to do one specific thing. If you're Ron DeSantis and you do come in second, you then need to have make a choice. You either need to move your entire operation to South Carolina and try to pull a Barack Obama, right? Wherein they
he's going there first before New Hampshire.
Right, because you have to remember it's.
Think about this for a second, folks. This is Joy Reid actually trying to make the case for Ron DeSantis. And Ron DeSantis is further to the right than Donald Trump on some of the social issues. This is the thing that's crazy to me. Pay attention to what they're doing here. If you're Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, you got to do this and you got to do that. Why are you giving them tips? Because at the end of the day, guys, they don't really care about the social issues. They just want someone that's going to come in and maintain the status quo. That's what this is really about. A very mask-off moment here.
The other evangelical states. So since he's built his strategy on getting white evangelical voters to come to him, he needs to go immediately there. But then you have to remember, you can't lose Florida to Donald Trump without being completely ritually humiliated and going down in flames. So you have to make a decision how much of your resources go to South Carolina versus Florida. If you're Nikki Haley, you go immediately to South Carolina, right? You have to obviously win New Hampshire.
Yes,
I think she'll not win, but come in second. I'm saying win when I say come in second. So she'll do decently in New Hampshire, but she absolutely has to perform well in South Carolina. It's the other evangelical
She has a
state.
chance to win in New Hampshire. She is within single digits of Donald Trump in New Hampshire. It is not going to help her do that if she comes in third tonight. She'd be better off if she came in second tonight. But she has to throw all the way down.
She has to
in
go
New
to New
Hampshire
Hampshire, absolutely.
And she can't lose her.
Listen to how they're talking about this, guys. She has to do this. She has to do that. They are actively, what did I tell you? What did I tell you at the end of the day? It doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. What they're trying to keep in place is the status quo.
This whole thing about how many tickets out of Iowa just depends who you ask. The political professionals, the press, which is interested in this, everyone who loves to follow politics, how many tickets, let's follow this as long as it goes. But if we again return to the fact that there is an anti-Trump wing of this party, it might be more embattled than last time. But as I mentioned, last time it was over 50% if you pooled all the other votes. That wing and the donor class would like to find the alternative now. Trump just won Iowa. They'd like to find it now, which means forcing out one of the candidates with whatever mechanism and pressure and money they can do.
So it's the money drive.
So the mob thing that I think Jen's right. Trump's saying that if he's in a one-on-one.
Right.
But the Trump campaign and status quo MAGA would love for this to just play out over a couple states and have a how he won last
If DeSantis
cycle.
comes in second tonight in Iowa, I think we have a relatively long Republican primary. And if DeSantis gets shellacked in Iowa tonight, I think we have a relatively short Republican primary, at least in terms of it being reduced down to two.
Yeah, and the problem for Haley is if she does well tonight, or even if she just does really well in New Hampshire, she has to have a path after that.
Right.
And the electorate in the states after New Hampshire is much more like Iowa than it is like New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a unique unicorn in some ways in the early primary states. It's much more independent. It's much more of the people Steph was talking about. And that's her challenge. She could have money, but it's like, how are you going to win? How are you going to do in your home state?
If she wins New Hampshire, she gets to Super Tuesday no matter what.
Yes, yes.
You guys hear this? This is Rachel Maddow. Okay, so first of all, I find it very appalling that Rachel Maddow is still on MSNBC after she lied for years about Russiagate. I find it absolutely disgusting. Disgusting. But here she is. Why are you, if you're supposed to be pro-Democrat, why are they amped up for Nikki Haley to do well? Knowing that right now in the general polls, even Nikki Haley is beating Joe Biden. Am I the only one that thinks this is an issue? Like, think about this, guys. They are actively cheering on Nikki Haley. Now, if they really want the Democratic Party to do well, shouldn't they be talking about having criticisms of all the candidates that are running in the race? No, because it's not about that. It's not really about Joe Biden winning. It was never really about that. It was about protecting the status quo. And they would rather have someone in who is a Republican, that is a warmonger, that protects the status quo, that is backed by big money interests. They would rather have that person in the White House than to have someone who's a Democrat or outside of the two-party system that is not a part of the status quo. They reveal themselves.
But she still has to have a path to winning in those states that are more like Iowa than New Hampshire.
And I think to the point that you made, Steph, I mean, it's the elephant in the room. She's still a brown lady that's got to try to win in a party that is deeply anti-immigrant and which accepts the notion that you can say immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country. She's getting, birthered by Donald Trump. And I don't care how.
So now they go on to talk about a sob story for Nikki Haley. Like, this is unbelievable. Unbelievable, folks. Do you see this? Now they're making Nikki Haley a victim. She's still a brown lady in a party that is deeply anti-immigrant. Joy Reid, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing? What the fuck? Do you think Nikki Haley would make those comments? No, she wouldn't. Nikki Haley wouldn't even make those comments about herself. And here's MSNBC making her a victim.
Much the donor class likes her, which will ramp up a lot the better she does in New Hampshire. So it's still a challenge. I don't see how she becomes the nominee of that party with Donald Trump still around. I can't picture it happening. Maybe it could happen. Ron DeSantis' only argument for staying in it is he's the white guy, that he can still make the appeal to white evangelists.
It's a hot mess. Well, that was before it was announced that Donald Trump did win. We'll go ahead and jump into that clip. Not only did he win, they were even saying he won by a landslide. This is crazy. This is crazy. He performed better. Trying to remember. Yes, he performed better in Iowa this time around than he did when he ran the first damn time. This is just, it's wild. Why?
It's 1 a.m. here in New York, midnight in Iowa. And the very first test of the 2024 Republican primary season is now complete. Joining me now at the top of this hour is former Obama campaign manager, MSNBC political analyst, and my former boss, David Plouffe, former RNC chairman and co-host of The Weekend, Michael Steele, former communications director for Jeb Bush's 2016 campaign, and now writer-at-large for The Bulwark, Tim Miller, and former communications director for President Barack Obama, Jennifer Palmieri. Now, tonight in Iowa, NBC News projected that Donald Trump won the caucuses with more than 50% of the vote. These numbers really cement the 4 times indicted defendant candidate's status as the front runner. We already know.
We're going to pause here so you can see the numbers. So Donald Trump won by 51%. Ron DeSantis, 21.2%. Nikki Haley, 19.1%. So it was pretty close between DeSantis and Nikki Haley, but she did end up landing 3rd place. And as you heard that conversation before, they wanted her to actually get in the 2nd place spot in Iowa. But Donald Trump won by 51%. And you don't see Vivek here. They only listed the top 3. Vivek was 4th. This is crazy. This is crazy. This is, and by the way, wait for it, because once we get into November, they're going to be blaming all of us, by the way. They're going to blame Cornel West, Jill Stein, RFK Jr. They're going to blame people like me, RBN. They're going to blame people like Jimmy Dore. They're going to blame everybody who told people to leave the 2-party system. It's going to be all of our faults, instead of putting the blame on the fact that the Democratic Party is the reason why Donald Trump won by such a significant lead that he did. Because they basically put out this witch hunt. They made Donald Trump a freaking martyr. That's why he won the way he did. They said this win was huge.
This, but in the Republican field, the race for 2nd place had a little bit more drama, with Nikki Haley and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis locked in a dead heat for most of the night. But as awkward as he may be at times, and he is awkward, DeSantis did put in the work in Iowa, and maybe that helped him. He visited all 99 counties, and it paid off a bit with a 2nd place finish in the state, even if he doesn't have a real path forward, it seems. 3rd place finisher Nikki Haley is now off to New Hampshire, where traditionally presidential candidates go right after the Iowa caucuses. But not Donald Trump. He will once again buck tradition and head to a courtroom in New York City for the start of the E. Jean Carroll defamation trial. And that civil case is, of course, on top of the 4 criminal trials that Trump is also facing, where he also seems to want to appear in the courtrooms, involving his hoarding of classified information and attempts to overturn the last election, just to name a few. But Trump's legal woes certainly didn't hold him back tonight. As we were just talking about 2/3 of Iowa caucus goers say that even if he's convicted, they
see, even if Trump is convicted, is he fit to be president? 65% of the Iowa GOP caucus says yes. Democratic Party, this is on you, dude. This is really on you.
Still consider him to fit to be president. So this slice of the Republican electorate seems pretty clear who their first choice is, criminal charges and all. Back with me is my all-star panel here. So we've talked a lot about Trump. We've talked a lot about the Republican candidates. Let's talk a little bit about the other guy running, President Joe Biden. So, Plouffe, you talked to the campaign a lot. If they're watching what happened tonight, what do they think of it? Do they think about it?
Well, one thing that's important when you're incumbent is, when does the general election start? And so this would suggest it's going to start a lot sooner than you'd probably like.
Is that good for them?
I would argue maybe it is, just because the sooner this turns into a searing contrast, probably the better off Biden is. So even if you'd probably like a couple more months to prepare, I think being in that boxing ring with him and him alone is probably helpful. And I think what it shows is, the Republican Party is, my guess is, the biggest concern I have as I think about next November is the turnout differential that could be there. There's not the enthusiasm for Biden that you'd like. Maybe they can remedy that. I think Trump's going to get his turnout. There's clearly some disaffected Republicans that may sit it out, or maybe Biden could do as well as him he did in 20, and that was important. But I think Trump's going to get his turnout. I would argue if he gets convicted, even more so. So I think these numbers show whatever you think it's going to take to win a state like Wisconsin or Arizona, if I'm the Biden campaign, I add 10% to it.
Think about this for a second, guys. What did he just tell you? He said Trump is going to get his turnout. I don't think Joe Biden is going to have the same type of turnout he had in 2020, right? He's already lost support from Muslim voters in this country, particularly in the state of Michigan, which he does need to win. But again, he's just pointing to the fact what I just told you guys. Donald Trump still has a base. Mainstream media has been telling people that he doesn't have a base, that was a lie. That was a blatant lie. And we see this now with the numbers.
It's basically a tax that the Trump turnout's going to be there. But that's the big thing is starting next Tuesday, if Haley doesn't win New Hampshire, Trump's speech is going to be, I'm done with the primary. I've dispatched with all these second-rate losers, and it's time for the rematch.
Yep.
And that could possibly be the case. Now, New Hampshire is a mixed bag when it comes to electoral politics. You know, they do tend to have more independents there as well. Also libertarian voters. They could go either way. But apparently right now, her and Donald Trump, Nikki Haley and Donald Trump are pretty much neck and neck in the state of New Hampshire. Donald Trump will not be present for the New Hampshire GOP caucus because of the court trial. So he'll be in New York for that trial. But I don't think it even matters. Like, that's the thing. Donald Trump didn't show up to any of the debates and he just blew them out of the water in Iowa. So he did win Iowa caucus, and not to anyone's surprise, MSNBC's Rachel Maddow made an exclusive decision here that they were not going to feature his speech. Listen to this. This isn't the first time she's done this. She did this before earlier in the year when Donald Trump had a press conference. She said, we will not be airing it on MSNBC. Listen to this.
Interject. I'm sorry. I just have to do a little bit of business just for a second. At this point in the evening, the projected winner of the Iowa caucuses has just started giving his victory speech. We will keep an eye on that as it happens. We will let you know if there's any news made in that speech, if there's anything noteworthy, something substantive and important. The reason I'm saying this is, of course, there is a reason that we and other news organizations have generally stopped giving an unfiltered live platform to remarks by former President Trump. It is not out of spite. It is not a decision that we relish. It is a decision that we regularly revisit. And honestly, earnestly, it is not an easy decision, but there is a cost to us as a news organization of knowingly broadcasting untrue things. That is a fundamental truth of our business and who we are. And so his remarks tonight will not air here live. We will monitor them and let you know about any news that he makes.
That is only helping Donald Trump. That is not hurting Donald Trump. One, who is Rachel Maddow and MSNBC to talk about truth and airing truth when they lied to people about Russiagate for years? They've lied to people about Israel and Gaza. They lied to people about Russia and Ukraine. I mean, let's be real here, folks. It is absolutely a clown show. You can't make this up. You can't see this anywhere else. For her to sit there and stare at the camera blatantly and make those comments. Two, this is censorship. You don't have to agree with Donald Trump. You don't have to vote for Donald Trump. You ain't got to like Trump. But for you to choose not to air his speech, that is only going to help Donald Trump. That's not going to hurt him, because it'll make more people upset at MSNBC and they'll seek out that information elsewhere. But it's censorship. And it should be illegal for a major news network to censor candidates' acceptance speech. When you win a caucus, it should be illegal for you to say, as a news network, we are not going to show that candidate's speech. Because people have orange man bad syndrome. They really do. Like, this is wild. You don't think you would never see them do that to Joe Biden. Hell, they won't do it to Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley. well, we don't want to air the speech. It's not out of spite. It is. It really is out of spite. You're not airing the speech because you don't want him to win. This is crazy. Again, the media is the biggest hurdle that you have to battle. This is the biggest hurdle you have to get over. So I'm going to show you part of what he said that I think they don't want you to hear. Listen to this.
We're going to rescue our economy. We're going to save our economy. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. There was never a greater economy, and now we don't. And when you look at what's happened with inflation, inflation is destroying, they call it a country killer. Going back hundreds of years, Germany, countries that had big inflation are dead. They become dead countries. We have to stop that immediately. And we want peace through strength. Russia would have never attacked Ukraine, would have never done it. Putin and I get along fine. We get along very well. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. The fake news, which if the fake news would become real and honest news, 90% of our problems in this country would be solved. They would be solved.
The part that he said about Russia and Ukraine, that's one of the things. I don't agree with everything he says here. There's some parts I'm going to debunk as well, but I don't agree with everything he's saying here. But that part about Russia and Ukraine, I really do believe that probably would not have happened under his presidency because we didn't have new wars under his presidency. Now, don't get me wrong. He still participated in coups. He still participated in drone strikes as well, but we didn't have any new wars. Let's continue.
So Russia would have never attacked. Israel would have never been attacked. The Ukraine situation is so horrible. The Israeli situation is so horrible. What's happened? And we're going to get them solved. We're going to get them solved very fast. I actually said Ukraine. I know President Putin very well. I know Zelensky very well. I'm going to get him in. We're going to get it solved very quickly. Should have never happened. Would have never happened. Now you have all that death, far greater than people understand. The numbers are far, far greater than anybody would even think possible. You're going to find that out in the years to come. When they knock down these massive buildings in Ukraine and then you see they announced 2 people were slightly wounded. No, many people were killed. Many people were killed. We're going to get it stopped. But it's so sad because it should have never started. People killed and a culture destroyed. You can never replace 1,000-year-old buildings with the most beautiful golden domes and churches and everything, just all rubble now. And it's so sad. Would have never, ever happened. And likewise, Israel would have never been attacked. It all comes from Iran, and we would have had to deal with Iran very quickly. Had the election where we, by the way, got, and I say we because it's all we got more votes than any sitting president in the history of our country. But we
pause there for a second. So obviously he leaves out, again, just going back to October 7th, when he talks about Israel, he leaves out what happened before October 7th, right? So all of them are doing this, all of them except for Jill Stein and Cornel West. All of the other candidates are leaving out what has been happening to the Palestinian people prior to October 7th, leaving out the West Bank and Gaza, leaving out the occupation, leaving out the oppression. So think about that. Remember, when it comes to Israel, Trump and Biden both support Israel. Both of them. Remember, Trump was the one that decided to move the capital. If I remember correctly, didn't he move the capital to East Jerusalem? I have to double check. Remember, he was the one that made the decision to move the capital. So these are the things, people. Pay close attention to what he's saying, because some people, they're going to hear this and they're going to be like, oh, yeah, he's right about, when it comes to Ukraine. And what he said about Israel will just skip right over their heads. Because this is not just about Iran. when he brings this up, oh, it's all because of Iran. No, it's not not all because of Iran. It's because these people were occupied. Had that never happened, we wouldn't be in this situation to begin with. You cannot take people, enclose them in an open air prison, restrict their resources, and you control the land, the air, and the sea. You limit what kind of food they can have, if they can have food. You give them dirty water. You cannot do this to people and expect the people to just take it forever. So he leaves that out. What I think they didn't want you to hear was the part that he mentioned about the economy. That part I agree with. Economically, a lot of people that I've spoken to, their pockets were doing a lot better under Trump's presidency than under Biden's presidency. When we talk about even the student loan debt crisis, everybody likes to keep crediting Joe Biden. That actually was implemented under Donald Trump's presidency. Not here to tell you to vote for either one of them. I'm not voting for either one of them. But I am here to correct some of these statements that have been made by people. I didn't think they wanted you to hear that, and I don't think they wanted you to hear what he said about Ukraine.
They say we lost by a whisker, okay? But regardless of that, we're going to do incredible things, and we're not going to let China do what they'd like to do. I get along great with him also. President Xi is a very strong leader, and we're going to get things solved. We're going to get the Ukraine war solved. We're going to get the Israeli situation solved. But if you think back to that, Iran was broke. I said to every country, anybody does business with Iran, buys oil from Iran, they were broke. We're not going to let you do business in the United States. And that's the way it is. They did very little business, almost sold no oil. Nobody wanted to do that. That's a big penalty. And what happened is they had no money to give to Hamas and to give to Hezbollah. And in fact, there were a lot of stories at the time. They had no money for terror. And for 4 years, we had no terror. We had the terror ban. They call it the Trump travel ban, but it was really the Trump terror ban.
So let's just go ahead and correct something else there too. Israel is a terrorist state. They've been terrorizing the Palestinian people since 1948. I didn't mean to rhyme there, it just happened. But Israel, I would consider it to be a terrorist state. They have been terrorizing those people, pulling the people out of their homes. You see, terror looks different to different people. But apparently, when it comes to the American people, we have this idea in our head that terrorism only relates to certain people. Terrorism is not defined by Islam. And a lot of people think that. Terrorism is defined by your actions. But he won the Iowa caucus. And I honestly believe had the Democratic Party not tried to do everything that they could to prevent him from being a candidate in the first place, I don't think he would have won by 51%. But here we are. I'll take those comments on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin, JVB. The narrative is everything for now, won't be for long. Thank you for the tip, Anna Mayers. Sabby, Blinken meant that as we honor his death, so he's not in our way, ? Thank you for this as well. No one hates any one politician more than they hate the MSM or the red-blue duopoly. We will break your system is the real MO now. Thank you so much for that. Going to go to some of the comments here. Thank you so much for the super chat, Ray. I love you, Sabby. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the super chat as well. Who is voting for Nikki Haley? I don't know. I haven't met anyone that supports Nikki Haley, so that would actually be an interesting panel to do. Like, why are some of these people supporting who they're supporting? Thank you for the super chat, Sparky. Nikki is a screeching hag. Well, Sparky, tell us how you really feel. Tell us how you really feel. Thank you, Marvin. Sabby, check out USS Liberty Attack 667. IDF did it. Thank you for the super chat, David. My guess is MAGA base is greater than the RNC base at this point. Thank you, Sparky. Establishment pushing Nikki like they pushed Kamala. Thank you for the super chat, James. Not voting for anyone only services like better schools, road, laws to close border. Well, if you live in a ballot initiative state, like I do, that's one of the cool things, like, because I don't even have to vote for the president at all. I could just show up to vote for the ballot measures, right? Thank you for the super chat, Sam. This panel really has the look for politics, only bleh. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Ari. Thank you for the super chat, NY Varsity. She was the biggest Russiagate puppet, still clinging to it, and all of her tweets are still up. Where is her censor? You're not going to see it, NY Varsity. You're not going to see it. Thank you to P. Smith for being a member for 4 months. On March 29th, 2021, Maddow said you couldn't give nor get you couldn't give nor get the pandemic if you got the jab. Yeah, there was that too. Thank you for the super chat, NY Varsity. We make an APAC money. Sang in the form of Busta Rhymes, A-Rap money. And thank you for the super chat, Sparky. Before the recent crisis, Iran had nothing to do with Hamas. Netanyahu propped up Hamas with suitcases full of cash, and the U.S. laundered their control and financing of Hamas via Qatar. Thank you so much for that. I'm ready for part 2 whenever you're ready, Eric, on Type VNC. In the meantime, if you have not done so, don't forget to smash that like button. And if you're new, don't forget to sub and share. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to mention this as well. I don't want to forget. Oh, I forgot the Vivek part. Yeah, we'll get into that too. I don't want to forget, but thank you so much for 70,000 subscribers, guys. We up in here, huh? So we're rolling into, excuse me, we're rolling in to 2024, doing the damn thing. So I just wanted to tell you guys, thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. We're going full speed ahead. Boop, boop, boop. Now, after the Iowa caucus results, Vivek Ramaswamy did decide to drop out of the race. And so there's a lot of buzz about this as well. Vivek Ramaswamy, wealthy political novice who aligned with Trump, quits campaign. And so there's Vivek there. And now, Vivek, here's the thing. Vivek, believe it or not, even though he was, defending Donald Trump, even though he said, in his opinion, he felt that Donald Trump was the best president of his lifetime, Vivek still did have his own unique base as well. Particularly some of the younger Republican voters really liked Vivek as well, excuse me. So it says Vivek Ramaswamy, the 38-year-old entrepreneur and political newcomer who briefly made a splash with brash policy proposals and an outsized sense of confidence, dropped out of the race for the Republican White House nomination after a disappointing 4th place finish in the Iowa caucuses. He then immediately endorsed former President Donald J. Trump for the White House. And so I'll just go ahead and show you a part of what Vivek Ramaswamy said here. After he decided to forego his campaign.
And earlier tonight, I called Donald Trump to tell him that I congratulated him on his victory. And now going forward, he will have my full endorsement for the presidency. And I think we're going to do the right thing for this country. And
So this could be also, Vivek, this wasn't a surprise to me for him to endorse Donald Trump, but this could also be Vivek trying to make a move towards maybe being Trump's VP. Although I am hearing rumors that Nikki Haley might actually be up for that spot, which would be wild. That would be wild. I'm just telling you right now. But those are the rumors that I heard this morning. You also have to remember that Donald Trump and Vivek actually did have somewhat of a spat a couple of days ago, where Donald Trump decided to turn on Vivek Ramaswamy, and he decided to basically say, like, don't vote for Vivek. There's only one MAGA, and Vivek is not true MAGA, so to speak. So there was that rift, but in the end, Vivek did ultimately endorse Donald Trump, which is what I predicted would happen. Now, let's talk about some of the failures here. I think one of the biggest mistakes that Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign made was giving too much credit to Donald Trump, right? Like, I felt like when you say that Donald Trump is the best president of your generation, and you give Trump credit for all these things that you thought were great, then people ask the question, then why are you running? So it just, people will start to see you as a copycat or a wannabe or like Trump 2.0 or something like that. You have to stand out on your own. And I think that's one of the campaign failures that Vivek Ramaswamy had. I said that from day one. I thought that it was a mistake to say that Trump was all these great things, because then people are going to ask, like, well, then why are you even running against him? Like, what's the point? Right? Obviously, he did really well when it comes to social media. He did really well when it came to press. He's had a number of interviews. He's been everywhere all the time, it seems like. And at one point, he was doing really well in the polls, particularly right before that first debate. There were arguments at that point in time from mainstream media that said that Ron DeSantis was the winner of that first debate. I actually thought Vivek Ramaswamy was the winner of that first debate. I said it back then at that point in time. But then something happened after that, and his numbers just started to continue to decline. And he never just seemed to be able to recover. So he is now out of the race. Thank you for the super chat, Ray. Vivek has a base, but where is Haley's base? I will let you know when I meet someone who is a Haley supporter. I'll let you know. I haven't met one yet. Thank you, Sparky. Sabby, you're the bestest girl ever. Thank you so much, Sparky. That is really sweet. And we are now moving on to our next story here. So, ladies and gentlemen, Bernie Sanders had an interview with Jake Tapper recently about Joe Biden and his campaign woes. He also spoke a lot in reference to the war, Israel and Gaza. Make no mistake, what you're about to witness here is Bernie Sanders actually begging people to still come and support Joe Biden. Start with the interview, then we'll get to this article where he's trying to scare people and fearmonger them to vote for Joe Biden. Listen to Bernie Sanders talk out both sides of his mouth.
Today marks 100 days since the brutal Hamas attacks on Israel. Here in the United States, divisions over the war that Israel launched that day are only growing. Joining me now, Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Senator, thanks again for joining. We have a lot to get to, but first let's start with this dramatic new escalation in the Middle East. President Biden strikes against the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. Top House progressive Congresswoman Jayapal said the president should have gotten and in fact needed permission from Congress, calling the strikes an unacceptable violation of the Constitution. Do you agree with her? Were these strikes illegal?
Well, what I do think is the president has a right to respond on an emergency basis to the disruption of international shipping brought about by the Houthis. On the other hand, he's got to get to Congress immediately. It is Congress that has the right to declare war, not the president of the United States. So I hope this is.
So I actually debunked that a couple of nights ago. Just FYI, that the president can do that. Now, is that necessarily the right thing to do? I would argue no, you should talk to Congress first, but the president can do that if he wants to. Let's continue. Let me take off the captions here as well.
Who gets to Congress immediately.
Let's talk about the war that Israel is waging in Gaza. You are trying to force a vote in Congress that would direct the U.S. State Department to look into whether Israel is using U.S. equipment or assistance to violate human rights standards in Gaza. The spokesman for the National Security Council, John Kirby, responded to your plan saying, quote, "We do not believe that this resolution is the right vehicle to address these issues, and we don't think now is the right time. The Israelis have indicated they are preparing to transition their operations to a much lower intensity, and we believe that that transition will be helpful both in terms of reducing civilian casualties as well as increasing humanitarian assistance," unquote. What do you say to that?
I strongly disagree. Jake, we have got to, as Americans, take a very deep breath. What is going on in Gaza right now is a horrendous humanitarian catastrophe. We're looking at 23,000 people who have been killed, almost 60,000 have been wounded, and 2/3 of the people who have been killed are women and children. You're looking at 70% of the housing units in Gaza that have been destroyed. Jake, if I use the word Dresden, Germany to you, you think about the horrific destruction during World War II of that city. What is going on in Gaza now in 3 months is worse than what took place in Dresden over a 2-year period. This is a catastrophe. And now, according to the United Nations, after you have 1.9 million people displaced from their homes, they don't have food, they don't have water, they don't have medical equipment, they don't have fuel. What you are looking at is imminent starvation.
But Bernie Sanders, when other colleagues of his were willing to step forward and call for a permanent ceasefire, Bernie Sanders was not willing to do that. Sorry, I still have the cough. Bernie Sanders was not willing to do that. So just keep that in mind. That's why I'm saying, like, he's talking out both sides of his mouth. He'll criticize what's happening, but he's never going to take that extra step.
Children are starving to death. So my view has been from the beginning, Israel has a right to respond to this horrific terrorist attack from Hamas. But you do not have a right to go to war against an entire people, women and children. And the United
First of all, how are they still responding at this point in time, right? Because the attack this was October 7th, right? They responded heavily. And before October 7th, Israel was going into Gaza and mowing the lawn before there was even this war. So when Bernie Sanders makes this statement, or anyone makes the statement, they have a right to respond. Israel responded. If I punch you once and you beat me the hell up and I'm on the ground and here it is days later and you're still beating me up, how long does a response last? How long do you have to defend yourself? So there's that. So that part right there, even Bernie Sanders, he's not even saying it the way that it should be said. Because that's the question that people should have. How long of a time do you have to continue to defend yourself? And how are you still defending yourself if they're not punching you? Because I'll tell you right now, the constant bombing from Israel is not making Hamas release any hostages. We had that one hostage release when there was the call for the temporary ceasefire. And then Israel went right back to bomb. So at this point in time, Israel is actually causing more harm towards the hostages actually being released. Because at the end of the day, it was never really about the hostages. Israel killed 3 of their own. So think about that.
United States Congress has got to act because a lot of this destruction is being done with military weapons supplied by the United States of America. And what the resolution that I'm introducing is about, it's consistent with the Foreign Assistance Act. It says that if American military assistance is given to any country, Saudi Arabia, Israel, any other country, it has got to be used consistent with human rights, international human rights standards, and American law.
Now, let's go ahead. Yes, Oz is correct. Bernie Sanders is the biggest traitor to the American left in history. Yes, he is. Let me go ahead and tell you why what he just said here is problematic. Pay attention to what he says.
Being done with military weapons supplied by the United States of America. And what the resolution that I'm introducing is about, it's consistent with the Foreign Assistance Act. It says that if American military assistance is given to any country, Saudi Arabia, Israel, any other country, it has got to be used consistent with human rights, international human rights standards, and American law.
So let me break something down for you folks. Bernie Sanders still agrees with the U.S. government giving Israel weapons. And Bernie Sanders wants us to trust that Israel is going to follow international law when they've been breaking it all this time. This is why I say again, he's criticizing what is happening, but he does not want a ceasefire. He still wants the war. Here's what should be said. If you're a true progressive, you should be calling for an end to all of these wars. And number 2, you shouldn't agree with the U.S. government giving arms to anybody. Period. Because the death of the people, of the civilians that are killed, whether it's Gaza, whether it's Yemen, whether it's Syria, it's on our hands. The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, Israel would not have been able to commit the amount of atrocities that it has against the Palestinian people since October 7th if it were not from the aid of the United States. And that is the reason why South Africa has decided to not only call Israel to the ICJ, but they are also suing the United States government and the UK for being complicit, for aiding Israel. That's why.
In my opinion, that is certainly not the case. We have a horrific humanitarian catastrophe. We cannot turn our backs on it. Congress has got to start moving to protect children in Palestine.
Now, how are you going to protect? Now, let's talk about this, folks. How are you going to protect those children in Gaza if Israel is still indiscriminately bombing the Palestinian people in Gaza? How are you going to protect the children when the Palestinian people can't even leave Gaza? They can't go into Israel. They couldn't even before this war without special permission. They're fenced in. They can't leave by sea. Israel controls the sea. They'll just shoot them like they shot the 2 Palestinian fishermen. They were just trying to fish. They can't go into Egypt, and they should not have to. So the question is, how are you going to protect those women and children that you're speaking of, Bernie Sanders, if Israel is claiming that Hamas is using the people as human shields? And that's why they use that phrase. They use that phrase as an excuse to bomb everything and everyone. Now, of course, Jake Tapper isn't going to ask Bernie Sanders that question.
You think that you can get 51 votes?
Not on Tuesday night, I don't. I think we're making progress. I think what we're trying to do is unprecedented. This is the first time this particular resolution has ever been brought to the floor for a vote. This is the first time we have ever seen members of the Congress beginning to stand up to Israeli aid. So it's going to be a long, hard process, but we got to begin somewhere. This is the beginning.
So you have been critical about what you call Netanyahu's illegal, immoral, brutal, and grossly disproportionate war, unquote. 100 days ago, of course, on October 7th, Hamas sent hundreds of fighters into Israel. They took hostages. They killed children. They killed families, grandparents.
Yes.
What should have been done? How can the Israelis go after Hamas if they are hiding among the Palestinian civilians?
Well, Jake, that is
See, this is why I said this before. How many times have we heard them say that they are in the tunnels? If you know they're in the tunnels, you should be going into the tunnels. Listen to how Bernie answers this question.
Very fair question. As I've said a million times, what Hamas is a disgusting terrorist organization. What they did is unspeakable. And they still are holding over 100 hostages. The situation is difficult. It's a highly densely populated urban area. Fighting there is very difficult. No question about it. This is not an easy task to go after Hamas. But you don't starve hundreds of thousands of children.
So you see what's happening here? You see what Bernie Sanders is doing?
In the process. Israel is a very sophisticated military, one of the most sophisticated in the world. It is not easy, but you don't destroy an entire people in the process. I think most people would say that is morally unacceptable.
See, let me tell you how Bernie Sanders is full of it, okay? Bernie Sanders knows damn well that the goal of the Netanyahu administration was to remove the Palestinian people altogether from the region. Bernie Sanders knows that. He's not stupid. People have actually confronted Bernie Sanders about this issue actually prior to his 2016 presidential run. I played a video on the show before of one of his town halls where he was confronted about this, and he actually yelled at his own constituent and told them to be quiet and sit down and shut up. And he said Hamas was the problem. Even back then, Bernie Sanders was not willing to acknowledge the racist goal of the state of Israel. He wasn't willing to acknowledge it because Bernie Sanders, once again, regardless of what the issue is only willing to go so far. This is Bernie Sanders here trying to basically save his own reputation, which has been destroyed over the past couple of years. He knows damn well that the answer to this issue isn't just giving food to starving kids. He knows this. This is Bernie Sanders trying to play this game and trying to hold on to whatever is left of his base that is still out there. That's him still trying to hold on just a little bit. Got to protect my legacy somewhat. It's a mess.
So what do you think they should be doing right now, the Israelis?
Well, I think for a start, there has got to be an immediate humanitarian pause. Food, water is not getting into Gaza. And children are going hungry and people are facing starvation. So the first thing that's got to happen is there have to be a massive increase in humanitarian aid to fend off the famine. And second of all, Israel has got to target its attacks. You cannot continue this vast war of indiscriminate bombing and now starvation against the women and children and innocent people of Gaza.
So he mentions there needs to be massive humanitarian aid to help the Palestinian people in Gaza, but he leaves out the fact that Israel has been blocking some of the food and supplies from going into Gaza in the first place. That the IDF, they have been raiding trucks. These are the things that Bernie Sanders, I know he knows, but he's leaving out. All you have to do is look on social media. You can see videos of the IDF raiding trucks that are coming in with the supplies, burning the supplies, taking the food away so that the kids won't have it. And Bernie Sanders isn't going to say that. What does that tell you?
President Biden has caught a lot of criticism from the left on his support for Israel amid this war. You're a leader on the progressive left, the movement that you helped create in your presidential campaigns. Do you think that young progressives in the United States will ultimately rally behind Joe Biden in November, or has he seriously damaged his standing?
Look, I think we will see what happens in November because the choice is pretty clear. Running against Donald Trump, who I suspect will be the Republican candidate, is one of the most dangerous political figures in modern American history. So I think people will end up rallying around Biden. But there is no question, it is very hard for young people, I think for most Americans, to be excited about what is going on right now. President has got to change course. He has been very clear. He has expressed his concern about quote unquote indiscriminate bombing. He has asked Netanyahu over and over again to change course. Netanyahu just yesterday said, no, we're going to continue doing what we are doing. Unacceptable.
Now, see, this is Bernie being disingenuous here, because obviously, if I ask you to stop indiscriminately bombing people that you despise, but I'm still supplying you the weapons, what do you think is going to happen? So Bernie knows that.
You cannot give billions of dollars to a country that ignores your wishes, violates international law. So I would hope that the president follows through on his concerns and says to Netanyahu, this is unacceptable. You're not getting a nickel more from the United States unless you radically change course. We're not going to see hundreds and hundreds of thousands of children starve to death.
We shouldn't be sending them weapons in the first damn place anyway, Bernie Sanders. We shouldn't be sending them. Look, the U.S. government gives Israel $3.8 billion a year. Just because, like $3.8 billion a year. You're basically rewarding them for bad behavior. And nobody it's like, if you push back on that and you make criticism about it, then people are like, but that's not fair because their people have been through so much. Okay. Yeah. Well, American descendants of slavery have been through a lot too. I don't see the U.S. government giving us any money. Oh, too soon? They'll help out another country. They'll help out people in another country before they help people out in this country. Make no mistake. Now, here's the problem. This was on Democracy Now! A couple of days ago, where they brought up the problem that Joe Biden, what they were not expecting to happen. Let me make sure. Yeah. Let me start it right about here. I want you to hear this because this gentleman here, his name is Trita Parsi. And in this discussion, it says Biden's refusal of Gaza ceasefire could drag us into another Middle East war. But there was something that he said during this discussion, and I just want to make sure I get the timestamp correct here. Okay, yeah. I think it's right about here. Listen to what he says was not expected.
The Beltway, why Biden is refusing to in any way stand up, not just signal on the outside calling for de-escalation, but actually making those calls, since he's had, to say the least, so many with Netanyahu.
Listen to this.
I think the Biden administration made a huge miscalculation from the outset. They did not think that there would be this type of a backlash amongst the American public, including his own supporters, against the Israeli campaign.
Did you guys hear that? The Biden campaign or the Biden administration did not expect this type of backlash towards this war and towards his administration giving weapons to Israel. So when the protests started, and they have been continuing, they didn't have a response for that. They didn't expect that. Now, how do you get to the point where you don't expect that to happen? You are not in tune with your constituents. Number one, I told you Biden didn't really have a solid base to begin with. There was a lot of people voting against Donald Trump, so there was that. But number two, you're not actually talking to the people on the ground, because you were talking to donors and you're talking to people in that DC beltway. You are not talking to these younger voters. Did you talk to people in Muslim communities to ask them how they felt about this? Now I see an announcement that says Joe Biden wants to go to Michigan to try to win over the Muslim voters again. If I was you and I were in Michigan and he's supposed to be going to Dearborn, I'm not telling you not to go to the event, but if you go to the event, if it was me going to the event, I'd bring everybody I know and we'd have a sea full of Palestinian flags. A sea full of them. Did he talk to those people? Did he talk to younger voters about how we feel about war? Has he been talking to the Gen Z kids? Has he talked to millennials? That's because Joe Biden and people like Joe Biden are out of touch. They're not paying attention. Joe Biden and Barack Obama still think it's 2008. A lot has changed in this country. People are fed up. People are tired. And the pro-war narrative doesn't work the way that it used to, boo. Doesn't work the way that it used to. So if he actually wasn't out of touch, and if he was paying attention to his constituents, and if he was actually talking to everyday people on the damn ground, it wouldn't have come as a surprise. Now, Bernie is also repeating DNC establishment talking points. Listen to this article from The Guardian. Bernie Sanders, it will be the end of democracy. Bernie Sanders on what happens if Trump wins and how to stop him. So here is Bernie Sanders repeating a DNC establishment talking point. The end of democracy. How the hell you're going to talk about the end of democracy, Bernie Sanders, when the DNC cheated you? You know damn well we don't have a true democracy in this country. So you see this? It's a clown show. It's a clown show. So I want to go to one part in this article. I'm not going to read the entire article, but there's one piece here that I do want to highlight right about here. Now, as the Iowa caucus kicks off the 2024 primary season on Monday, Sanders is at it again, except this time he says the stakes are much higher. A second Trump presidency will be more extreme. He is a bitter man, having gone through 4 indictments, humiliated. He's going to take it out on his enemies. Even for a politician who doesn't mince his words, his assessment of a Trump victory in November is sobering. It will be the end of democracy, functional democracy. That's Bernie Sanders' quote. Here's Bernie Sanders seriously trying to pretend like we have real democracy in this country. DNC fraud lawsuit, anyone? Hello. He said it may not happen on day one. Trump wouldn't be as obvious as to abolish elections, but he would steadily weaken democracy, making it harder for young people and people of color to vote. Innervating political opposition, whipping up anger against minorities and immigrants. Who's whipping up anger against at least a certain segment of the immigrant population right now? That's Joe Biden. I just told you he's lost a significant portion of the Muslim vote in this country, which the largest Arab population in the U.S. just happens to be in Michigan, in a state that he needs to win. He was able to win those voters last time around. This time around, they're feeling differently because he is aiding in a genocide against other Arab groups. Like, what the hell? A second Trump presidency will be much more extreme than his first. He's made that clear, says Sanders. There's a lot of personal bitterness. He's a bitter man, having gone through 4 indictments, humiliated. He's going to take it out on all his enemies. We've got to explain to the American people what that means to them, what the collapse of American democracy will mean to all of us. You see what he's doing here? Collapse of American democracy. Can I just tell you guys something? If you talk to the average working class Joe Schmo, the last thing they're thinking about is, man, I sure do want to protect American democracy. If I go to Baltimore, visit my family, my extended family, if I go to Baltimore and I say, man, are you guys worried about protecting democracy? My cousins will probably slap me. He doesn't ascribe the rise of Trump solely on a lumpen mass of redneck working class Americans, deplorables to borrow a phrase. I do not believe that all Trump supporters are racist or sexist homophobes. I think what's going on in this country is a belief that the government is failing ordinary Americans. Now look at the way that he frames this, a belief. Nah, it's a fact. Bernie Sanders knows that. His entire campaigns were about that. Now it's a belief. Get out of here. Pay attention to these types of things, guys. We got to pay attention. But that's Bernie Sanders talking out both sides of his mouth. And to be clear, for people who would ask me, well, what do you want Bernie Sanders to tell the voters to do? So if you really care about the kids in Gaza, Bernie, if you're really against genocide and you really want this to stop, the choice is clear. You would rally whatever is left of your base. And even some of the ones that walked away would probably join in this. You rally what's left of your base the same way you rally people across this country when you were asking for money. When you were running those 2 campaigns. And you tell them, this time around, we're going to break the system and we're going to vote for the candidates that are against the genocide. Bernie Sanders, just like that overnight, could have thousands of people joined with him or rallied in the streets and say, you know what? We're all going to back. You guys are going to back either Jill Stein or Cornel West. You're going to back those candidates that are against the genocide and want the dignity and self-determination for the Palestinian people. That's what we're going to do. Hell, he could have did that after he lost in 2016, after they took it from him. Boo. And we wouldn't be trying to start a third party movement now. The movement would have already been here. So what is Bernie Sanders actually good for, ladies and gentlemen? He want to criticize the genocide, but he wants you to vote for the genocider, okay? Somebody make this make sense to me. And I don't want to hear, oh, well, then they'll get Donald Trump. If Bernie Sanders had rallied all of his supporters and said, we all going to band together and we're going to support the third party independent candidates that are against the genocide, thousands of people would have followed him and they could actually have a chance of actually winning. But Bernie Sanders isn't going to do that because Bernie Sanders don't really care that much about them damn kids. Bernie Sanders cares about making sure he still has a spot at the table in the political arena, even when he retires. So miss me with the poor children, Bernie, if you're telling people to vote for their oppressor. If you're telling people to vote for Jim Crow Joe. You're telling people to get out there and continue to support the guy who is giving Israel the weapons in the first damn place. You don't care about them damn kids. So miss me with that. Miss me with it. Never forget. For most of these politicians, they're going to make sure they protect their reputation. They're going to make sure they protect their name. They're going to make sure they protect their status so that they still have a seat in that DC bubble. That's what it's really about. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin JVB. What kind of juiced up psychopathetic sycophant do you be to work at MSNBC? People who want to make a lot of money. Those people make a lot of money, you guys. You'd be surprised. A lot of those commentators are millionaires. You would be surprised. Gonna go to some of the comments. Thank you for the super chat, Sparky. Lieutenant Colonel Allen West would be a good VP pick for Trump. Establishment Republicans gerrymandered him out of his congressional district for a reason. He can help keep Trump from being BS'd by the Pentagon. Interesting. I've never heard of him. Ninja Live says, no Sabby president can only do that in very specific. That's right. You're right. You're right. Specific circumstances, emergency, when attack is on U.S. soil or people, Congress has been allowing executive abuse. It's true. You're right. Thank you for the super chat, Sparky. Most Israelis killed on October 7th were killed by the Israeli police and the IDF. Yes. Thank you for the super chat, Sparky. A little late, aren't you, Bernie? Thank you, Social Emotional Learning with Dr. Donnie. Bernie is a CIA op. Same thing as King. Divert from more radical action. I never fell for it. He was always a bad example of a socialist from the get-go. What's up, James? Shout out to James Wesley Wheat for being a member for 19 months. Says, you're still the best content on YouTube. Oh, thank you, James. That is very sweet. I don't know if I'd call myself the best, but thank you. Thank you for the super chat, Michael. America is an employee of the octopus. They're not allowed to change course. U.S. will go down with them. And thank you for the super chat, Ray. As long as Biden has the mail-in ballots, he's good. Oh, I forgot. They probably still are going to do that this time around. Interesting. Thank you for the super chat, Patrick. Bernie Sanders' wife and son committed campaign finance tax fraud when Bernie was running. You're right. You're right, Patrick. Aye. It all comes back, right? What is it? Celine Dion. Celine Dion had this song called It's All Coming Back to Me Now. Yeah. It's old school. 90s. All right, let's go to our next story here. Charlamagne the God, because they're pulling out all the stops to convince people, particularly some who are against Joe Biden because of Israel and Gaza and other reasons, to come out and support him anyway. Now, a couple of days ago, there was a statement from Charlamagne the God that said he regrets endorsing Joe Biden, and he was mad at Kamala Harris. You know, he's like, where have these people been? You know, he needs to step down, let someone else take the reins, yada, yada. But as these media figures who are more establishment tend to do, he has decided to support Joe Biden anyway. And so you have to understand that people like Charlamagne, the reason why they get into some of the spaces that they get into is because at the end of the day, they are never going to push too hard against the status quo, and they are there to maintain that narrative. So shout out to Case Study QB for this interview on CNN. It's with Charlamagne the God, basically trying to use Trump derangement syndrome. Trump derangement syndrome to convince people, well, yeah, we still got to support Biden. What else are we going to do? Charlamagne the God, one of the members of the Black misleadership class, still holding us back. And for those, and don't come give me no shade, okay? Don't go give me any shade, people, because I'm going to let you know right now. I remember when I was a senior at the University of South Carolina, I remember Charlamagne the God was on the radio in Columbia, South Carolina. He was my best friend's next door neighbor. So I remember who Charlamagne was way back in the day. So don't come for me. Let's go in.
Charlamagne the God, along with politics and culture commentator and host of the Native Land Pod, Angela Rye. So Angela, Michelle Obama has this great skill of being able to shade Donald Trump without ever actually uttering his name. But is she right?
Of course. I think I think that what we know and what I think she got baptized by fire with in 2008 when Barack Obama was running for office, and she said, and I'll never forget because I was like, finally somebody's saying something that I agree with. She said, for the first time in my adult life, I am proud of my country, and got dragged. We are finally at a place on the other side of a Donald Trump presidency where people can a little bit, they can kind of understand on the other side of an insurrection what she might have meant. And so now,
I don't know. I mean, you think they understand?
I think somebody might, maybe not. I mean, maybe a majority, right? Yeah. You would get fooled if you look at some of the social media, but I think a majority understand what she means, even if they don't like it.
But they're asking for, Joe Biden now to be impeached, even though Donald Trump is under.
Now that's not the day I'm talking about.
Yeah, but I want to just ask you, Charlamagne. I mean, you made some waves in a recent interview saying that you regret endorsing Joe Biden. Why?
It's not that I regret endorsing Joe Biden. It's just that, I think that we all can get burned, by politicians. Because when I say
lies, that is exactly what he said. He said he regretted endorsing Joe Biden. That is exactly what he said. I'm sorry, but see, now he's trying to walk that back because he's on CNN. He probably got a lot of flack for making that statement from Democrat establishment, and he wants to make sure that he's still able to go back into those circles. You got to remember who Charlamagne is. He's not just the host of The Breakfast Club, but he's also in political spaces where The Breakfast Club is not a political show, but they are known for having presidential candidates appear on that show. That is known as like the place to be to reach the Black audience, right? So that's where people tell you to go. You're running for president, go onto The Breakfast Club if you want to reach Black audience members, etc. But it's not a political show. But Charlamagne the God has enough access and pull that he's able to interview a president, a sitting president, former presidents. He was able to interview Kamala Harris, obviously. So this is him trying to make sure he can continue to keep that access. So miss me with that, Charlamagne.
Endorsing, I put my name and my reputation on the line with my listeners. And when my listeners feel like he didn't deliver, they come back to me and they say, hey, man, you're the one who told us to vote for, Joe Biden. You're the one who told us to vote for Kamala Harris. So, I care about my listeners and what my listeners think. But I do want to say that, I think President Biden historically has been a lack of a better word, a shitty elected official. But, Donald Trump is the end of democracy as we know it.
So you'd vote for Biden.
So you hear this? You guys hear this? That's right. Tia says, weak convictions stand by your beliefs, Charlamagne. You hear this? So this is Charlamagne fear-mongering people. Yeah, Joe Biden has been a shitty president, but, we're looking at between him and Donald Trump. Charlamagne the God they've interviewed independent and third-party candidates on The Breakfast Club. You see, he's never going to push for anything like that or call for anything like that because he would lose his spot in some of these social circles. This is what I'm trying to tell you guys. There's a reason why you don't see Black political commentators that are independent and not carrying water for the Democratic Party. This is why you don't see those people on these shows. This is why you don't see, other than when Breonna Joy Gray was Bernie Sanders' press secretary, other than that, you don't see her on these shows. A lot of these people have been blackballed. This is why you don't see it. This is exactly why. This is why you would never see RBN we would never be invited on CNN, and we do political news analysis. They would never do it. Never. So this is why. Charlamagne, let me stay in my circles.
Biden again.
I'm not saying either or, but I think, since y'all ask answers, because that's what y'all do on CNN, you like to ask answers, like you ask. What I say is you asked if Donald Trump was Black, would he get locked up? You know the answer to that.
But I mean, right? I don't know so you are going to vote for Joe Biden?
I think it's simple and plain. If you, Donald Trump is the end of democracy as we know it. I don't know what to tell people. And I know it sounds when you say that now in 2024, you've heard it so much because every time, there's a Republican candidate, people say, oh, it's the end of democracy. He's people go so far as to say, oh, he's the Antichrist. But this is one of those times where, it really actually positively is true.
So, Angela, what?
You see this? So let me tell you what they want us to think, right? See, they think we stupid. CNN is trying to convince Black voters in this country, and Black non-voters, actually. Let me bring on Charlamagne from the Breakfast Club to convince people that we could lose our democracy. They got this fool up here repeating these talking points. Most Black people ain't thinking about no damn democracy. Most Black people in this country are working class. Most working class people are not thinking about the end of democracy. They think about how to pay bills. They got a lot more things to worry about. This is a mess. That's why he's on there. Yeah, this could be the end of our democracy. He's not one of us, man. I don't know how else to say this. Yes, maybe he was back in the day when he was still on local radio in Columbia, South Carolina. But the thing is this now. Charlamagne the God, we're going to talk about the class issue. He's not on the same level with most of us. He just not. A lot of people living paycheck to paycheck. A lot of Black families living paycheck to paycheck in this country. He's not one of us. He's closer aligned with celebrities than he is with the average Black family in this country. But these are the people that they bring forward. These are the people that they want to convince you this is what we're about. This is not what we're about. So they bring on someone who's a freaking millionaire who just is also Black. Please convince the Black community that this is very important. There's no skin off his back. You guys understand? Regardless who wins the presidency, Charlamagne is still going to be rich. No skin off his back. This is why he's not trying to tell you to fight for nothing. This is why you not see no. When Charlamagne tell you get in the streets? When he tell you, let's all get out there with the platform that he has. You want to talk about doing something for the Black community? Why isn't he trying to do any type of organizing to actually help Black communities? Because again, he not worried about that. He worried about his own damn pocket. We've seen this game before. We've seen it before. You don't get to be in these spaces without being one of them, without being a part of the status quo. Let's continue.
He's saying about his Breakfast Club listeners and the disappointment, I guess, that there might be with the Biden administration. Do you see that being understood by the Biden campaign? Are they taking that seriously?
I think that there are folks in the campaign. I think there are folks in the White House. There are folks in the VP's office that certainly understand and have stressed these points to them ad nauseum. I think Madam Vice President understands. I think that what the real test will be what they do with that understanding, right? I think Leonard is absolutely right. It's hard to get people to do something that they already were very reluctant about doing. Don't forget they were overcoming a pandemic like the rest of us, overcoming George Floyd's death and murder for 9 minutes and 30 seconds on camera. There was a lot that folks had to overcome to get there. And so when you have to sacrifice so much, the least you can do is meet us in our sacrifice. And I think that's really what he's saying. It sounds like a reluctant endorsement you got out of him.
It does sound that way.
But I think the reality of it is...
I will always vote for democracy, and what I keep trying to...
So then it's a binary choice.
Can you talk about...
This is coon mentality. Pardon my language, but that's exactly what this is. Charlamagne tells you, I will always vote for democracy. Let me ask you guys a question. You'll always vote for democracy, Charlamagne? How about always voting for healthcare? So people can afford to go to the doctor. I don't know. Things like that. Huh? How about voting for some type of reparations, Charlamagne, so that Black people can get the debt they are owed? How about that? You always gonna vote for that? How about you see what he makes important? This is the Black misleadership class. Charlamagne got his, pulled up the ladder behind him, and now his biggest concern is democracy. They bring on talking heads like this instead of actual Black independent political commentators because we know what we're talking about, and they know that people like Charlamagne don't, and he just want to be a part of the system. That's what this is really about. You can't sit there and tell me this is coon shit. That's exactly what this is. You sit up there and you say, I will always vote for democracy. Black people ain't saying that shit. Am I alone in this? This is crazy. You go, come on, Charlamagne. Come with me. Come with me to the hood. Let's go to Baltimore. Let's go to the hood where my family lives. Let's go to the hood in Baltimore and let's ask them what they would vote for. Go make that statement there, Charlamagne, and tell them, well, I will always vote for democracy. Let's see how that goes over. That's what this is. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry I said the C word, guys.
The vice president, she just mentioned Vice President Harris. You've also kind of pulled back from that endorsement as well. What specifically do you see her not doing right?
Well, when I said that about her disappearing, it wasn't even about her, what she's done as vice president, the duties of a vice president. It was about, how she would interact with people who supported her. And I think that even when I say disappear, I'm talking about the person that I spoke to in 2020. When I speak to her, it didn't seem like, she was as much of a politician as she seems to be now. I feel like, Bakari Sellers has said it a million times. They've given her a trash portfolio and, they kind of keep her in the tuck and they don't let her be who she is willing to be. But I think at a time like this, man, if we're having these serious conversations about, democracy being on the line, I think that all of us should realize the language of politics is dead. And I think, new normals call for new things. So I think now's not the
He is walking back his rhetoric that he had towards Kamala Harris because he still wants to maintain access to Kamala Harris. Somebody reached out and spoke to Charlamagne after he made that statement. So now he's trying to walk it back. What has Kamala Harris done for the Black community, Charlamagne? And don't come to me and say, well, she went to a HBCU. And what has she done for the Black community, Charlamagne? When she was a senator, she wasn't she wasn't a Black woman then. She only considered herself to be a Black woman when it was beneficial politically. What has she done why do we got to carry water for these people? Why you got to kiss this woman's ass? Just so you can maintain some type of access. What has she done for the people? What has she done? Kamala Harris, if you look at her political career, she continued to look out for herself. Even to the point where you gotta sleep with some people to get ahead, Kamala Harris. She was always an opportunist. I didn't think she was that much of a politician as she is now. She was a senator. What the fuck are you talking about? She wasn't a politician. You want to talk about what happened when she was the AG in California? How she imprisoned Black parents? How she started the truancy law to jail Black parents? You think it's okay for these kids to be without their parents? You ain't know nothing about that. This is why they bring him on. She didn't seem like that much of a politician as she does now. This is why they bring on people like Charlamagne the God. They bring on the hosts of the hip hop shows, not the ones who are actually breaking down the news all the damn time, because they don't want to have one of us on because we'll call all this out. I didn't know that stuff about her past.
time for her to, be a politician.
You
now
think it's a communication issue that she
Democrats suck at messaging, period. We know this already, though. Like, the Democrats suck at messaging. Like, it's not like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris haven't done a lot of great things. They just don't know how to message it to the American people.
Who is a politician?
There he go line. Not like they haven't done a lot of great things. They just don't know how to message it. Now he sound like Ro Khanna. He sound like Bernie Sanders. He sound like the damn Democratic Party out there telling people they just don't know how to actually message it. Really? Kamala Harris, politician, lawyer, doesn't know how to send a message. Joe Biden was a senator for years. Doesn't know how to send a message? Charlamagne? Seriously? You're talking about some of the most educated people in this country, but they don't know how to send a message? This is a damn shame. Charlamagne should be ashamed of himself.
That you could support that for the presidency, a new age politician, in your words.
Does it matter if our only choices right now are Biden and Trump?
It does.
I'm curious about,
reimagine a world. What do you see out there? Do you see anybody fulfilling what you think needs to be done at that level?
No. Not in a little bit, because like I said, the language of politics is dead. And I think that's one thing, Trump did do. Like, Trump made it to where you could speak truth to power if you want to, but I think that a lot of folks choose not to. Like, nobody's stupid. Like, we're all sitting
Definitely wasn't truth he was speaking.
I'm not gonna say it was truth, but it's truthful to the people that he's speaking to. Like, whenever you can get on, if you can get on TV and you can say, hey, I'm gonna be a dictator on day one, and nobody gets upset about that. In fact, that just causes you to go up in the polls. They like clearly the things that he's saying. Maybe saying he's speaking truth is the wrong thing to say, but he's definitely speaking to his his constituents.
He's speaking to the fear and stoking the fear of an electorate that is very concerned about what Tiff was even saying earlier about a rising majority. We know that is indeed the case. I think the hard thing about going back to Kamala Harris, Madam Vice President.
Let me pause here for a second, because I'm going to tell you something about her too. So this is Angela Ray, right? So she is now a part of this podcast called Native Land Pod. And it's her and a couple other hosts. Let me tell you something. She's another one that came from the mainstream. So I don't want you to see her here and think that this is just like some independent chick with her own little podcast. No, she came from mainstream too. That's why she there.
We say a lot of this, they won't let her. And I take issue with the language, right? I think that she does need to be empowered, and she has that power to walk in that power. She has owned and requested a lot of what is in her portfolio. I think what is unfortunate is the way that she sounds the alarm. A lot of the folks on her team sound the alarm. It is not being echoed by folks in the White House.
What's the point of sounding the alarm behind the scenes? Like, if we're talking about
it's all been behind the scenes, like even today, right? Her being in Atlanta, talking to voters, talking to folks that run voting rights organizations, talking to a base that they need, that they rely on.
They should have been doing that for months.
When you say, why
wait for President Barack Obama to come out to light a fire under the campaign? And for y'all to, go out there and start doing things. And then, when it comes to President Biden, the first thing you do is go to a beautiful black church, Emmanuel AME, in my birthplace, Charleston, South Carolina, and then go to the soul food spot, Hannibal's Restaurant. Like, that is the thing that Democrats have been doing for years. Like, that's not effective anymore. Just showing up to a black church and then going to a soul food restaurant.
If the election.
But you still going to support them. And that's why they continue to do the bare minimum. You saying it's not, see, he's pointing out things that are obvious. But Charlamagne the God is still going to support Joe Biden. And he's still going to tell you to support. You see what I'm saying? So as long as you continue to support them, you can criticize all these things they're doing all you want to. And you don't have to support them at all. And for people who say, well, what are they supposed to do? Support the Republicans? No, I've been saying for a long time, you need to break away from the two-party system. Vote for the independents, vote for the third-party candidates. Or you can also just stay your ass at home. And I've said this from day one. Maybe the Democratic Party needs to lose. Maybe they need to be embarrassed, because it'll be embarrassing as hell. And I'm going to keep it real. It'll be pretty embarrassing Joe Biden beat Trump in 2020 and then to lose to him in 2024. That would be pretty embarrassing. But again, Charlamagne, you point out the obvious, but if you're going to tell people to keep supporting them anyway, that's why they don't feel they need to do anything for us.
Were held today. I mean, do you think Biden wins or loses?
The polls say he loses.
And you believe that?
That's what the polls say. And even when we have this conversation about, black voters, the reason that so many of us are sounding the alarm the way we are, because it's not just black voters, it's the vote, period. It's black voters, Latino voters, independents. And he's losing to somebody who has 91 criminal charges, 4 indictments, 2 impeachments. How are you losing into the polls to somebody like that?
On the Republican side, we've seen Nikki Haley rising in the polls. She, at the debate, attempted, or the CNN town hall, she attempted to clarify what she said. Listen to what she said.
If you grow up in South Carolina, literally in 2nd and 3rd grade, you learn about slavery. You grow up and you have, I had black friends growing up. It is a very talked about thing. In the South, we're very comfortable talking about it because we know that's what it is. But the goal was always to make today better than yesterday.
What did you make of that, Angela?
Nothing. It's a nothing burger. I mean, seriously, literally, you're mad at Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Dems, rightfully so, for being bad at messaging, but they're piss poor on addressing racism, right?
So let me just say something here. Notice what they're doing here. She's saying you're mad at Joe Biden and Kamala Harris because of messaging. People are mad at Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for economic reasons, for certain rights reasons. There are black voters in cities like Chicago that are mad at them because migrants have come into that city and they're giving them benefits that they won't even give black people who were born in this country. This is why people are mad at them. People are mad at them because of Israel and Gaza and the decisions that the Biden administration has chosen to make, siding with the state of Israel. It's not the message. The message has been very clear. And in the words of MJ, they don't really care about us. So we know the message, Angela. Listen to this part.
Like you for her to even.
Well, just to be clear.
You gonna defend that?
No, I'm not.
Do you really want to?
No, I'm not. But when Tim Scott said this is not a racist country, when Senator Tim Scott said it's not a racist country, Vice President Kamala Harris agreed with him, and so did my OG Jim Clyburn.
I'm not defending any of this.
What's the point that proves in your
mind?
What do you mean? What does that prove in your mind that Vice President Harris?
Clearly, all politicians are piss poor on speaking about racism in this country.
Well,
because they care about those hypothetical swing votes.
Let me just bring.
So you see this? So now it's all politicians are bad when it comes to speaking about racial issues in this country. So Charlamagne really just going to sit here and overlook more so what Nikki said, because remember, Nikki's from his state and he probably trying to get access to Nikki Haley. Don't be surprised. Vivek was on the Breakfast Club. So just keep that in mind. But then also, Charlamagne, you also know the racist shit that Joe Biden has done. Actually, that's to Charlamagne and to Angela. You guys know the racist shit that Joe Biden has done. Charlamagne, you from South Carolina. You know the history about Strom Thurmond. It still boggles my mind that this man's name was on so many buildings, in South Carolina. And that's who Joe Biden worked with. So it just, to me, it just, we can't, Black people, we cannot continue to sit back and just settle for anything. We just really can't. Like it is what it is. You don't owe anyone your vote. You don't. Be like the other Jackson and ask, what have you done for me lately? And as you can see, the Democratic Party hasn't done anything for you. You don't owe them anything. Period.
Back right to you talked about Mother Emanuel. One of the things, of the few, that I think Joe Biden did well yesterday is he addressed the Confederacy and slavery and the Civil War, unlike Nikki Haley and Donald Trump have done.
It doesn't matter, Angela, when he sat up there and he co-wrote legislation that put black men, heavily targeted black males, and put them into prison, pulling them out of the home, taking them away from the families. So who gives a damn, Angela, if he sat up there and he said some negative things about the Confederate flag? This man actually wrote and implemented legislation that targeted black men and destroyed black families. Now, how is that any different from Ronald Reagan and his war on drugs? You know, it's just, these the types they want you to hear from.
In a real way, like they sound like they are a part of the critical race theory undoing of black history in this country, or American history, really. Joe Biden took it right to them and was like, nah, that's not what it is. Her saying she got black friends does not justify, right, what she pulled on the stage recently.
But Joe Biden does the same damn thing. Joe Biden thinks that because he got his black friends that he can do the same damn thing. You know, it's just, we have to be wary of these types of people that continue to keep us repeating the same cycle over and over. These people are wealthy. That's why Charlamagne can sit there and tell you he's worried about democracy. They're not going to bring on the person that's going to tell you, I'm worried about paying off the rest of these student loans. I'm worried about being able to buy a house. I'm worried about being able to start a family. I'm worried about paying for these bills. I'm worried about inflation. I'm worried that I'm going to have to work 2 jobs for the rest of my life. I'm worried that I can't afford a 401k. So even when it gets to retirement age, I may have to continue to work because Social Security may or may not be there. But even if it is there, it won't be enough for me. They won't bring on those people. They bring on rich black people. Let's go to some of the comments here in the chat. Thank you for the super chat, Sir Bikes a Lot. The PMC doesn't want to do anything for workers and are currently in the 5 stages of grief. Right now, they're in stage 3, bargaining, which is Biden. Thank you, David. Charlamagne, just another slick politician like Biden or Trump. Shout out to Miss Delthea Simmons, who's been a Sabby member for 29 months. My opinion of Charlamagne has always been he's all right in his way. He just don't weigh much. Damn. Thank you, Social. Charlamagne is a CIA op. Haha, kidding. Am I? Thank you. Where is the love? The black boule is very dangerous to the black community. That's right. That includes the Clyburns, the Kamala Harris. Thank you for the super chat, Kevin W. Sabby dropping truth bombs. Much love. Thank you. Thank you, Nexus. Somebody put the fear of God into Charlamagne. That statement changed pretty quickly. And shout out to Beatrice for the super sticker. Thank you so much. We're going to our final story of the night. It's some good news. And this made me very, very happy to see. Saturday, there was another pro-Palestinian march in Washington, D.C. This one actually exceeded the past. The last D.C. march, I believe there were over 300,000 attendees. At this point in time, when Answer Coalition did the counter, it was over 500,000. But I've also checked again, actually, right before I went live, it said it was over 400,000. Before I went live, I checked again, and there were other numbers that said it was over 500,000 people that showed up. But you don't have to just believe me. You can see the counter for yourself. Let's dive in. And you can see there, just look at all the people moving through. It was just a sight to see, ladies and gentlemen. Just a sight to see. And honestly, I have to tell you, Answer Coalition is one of the organizations that sponsored this. So they actually have buses that pick up people in all different cities. I don't know how they do this, but they do. To pick up protesters in all these different cities, and they actually just bust them in to DC. So yeah, it was just beautiful, beautiful. Great sight to see there. So that again was the little time-lapse video there from Answer Coalition. Now, I want to show you something else too. It says the massive crowd in DC is getting ready. The people are making their voices heard loud and clear. And I want you to see the signs here. It says Biden and Blinken, Gaza will haunt you. So watch this. So you see that there, the banners? Yeah. So there's great footage here. If you want to see more, I highly recommend. I think Lee Camp covered this, and I believe Breakthrough Media also covered this. This is one of my faves. I can't play the sound because it's a Loki song, which is a Free Palestine song by Loki. But look at this, guys. Like the flag, and you can see. And this is Chuck Mody's video. Shout out to Chuck Mody because he's been doing the damn thing. The kids just did it for me. Look at the little kids. Everybody's out there doing their damn thing. Again, just honestly a sight to see. And if you haven't been to one of these protests, by the way, you don't have to go to DC to attend. I attended a protest, actually 2 right here in Boston. So they're in other cities as well. But this one was really huge. This was a big deal. There's all the flags. I know. I love it. I love it. I love it. Great, great turnout. Now, there was something else that happened at this event. Susan Sarandon was there. I want to show you that Ronnie Akalik actually had the opportunity to speak to Susan Sarandon really quick. So I want you to hear what Susan said here.
And, most of the country supports a ceasefire. We don't see that reflected at all in our representatives, certainly not in the White House. What do you think that says about the system that we have?
I think it says we need a new system because it's not the first time that the people of the United States have spoken and have been ignored. We've seen this constantly. And I think that also we have to talk about censorship and self-censorship and the fact that, we could see that mainstream media didn't even cover South Africa when it had to do with Palestine. They only covered the half that had to do with Israel. And so how can people make educated decisions when they're not getting information, or when the information, the passive and aggressive voices that we see even in the New York Times, a lot of people the good news is a lot of people have not known for the last 75 years what's been going on in Palestine before the 7th. And I think this has been a great time for people to learn their history. And I've taken all of my strength from all the Jewish people that I've come in contact with and groups that I have stood with. And also, I'm just so moved by the kids, by the organization. What happened in New York the other day was the shutting down of all the bridges and the tunnel was so inspiring to me because they're not held by any party. They're held by issues, and they know what's going on, and they understand in terms of the environment and where the money is being spent. They don't have health care. They don't have free education. They don't have subsidized housing like Israel does. And they're struggling, and they know what's going on with the environment. So I think they're at the point where they have nothing to lose.
That's right. And then there's another part.
And, you know, most of the country supports a ceasefire. We don't see that reflected at all in our representatives, certainly not in the White House. What do you think that says about the system that we have?
I think it says we need a new system because it's not the first time that the people of the United States have spoken and have been ignored. We've seen this constantly. And I think that also we have to talk about censorship and self-censorship and the fact that, we could see that mainstream media didn't even cover South Africa when it had to do with Palestine. They only covered that.
Oh, I did this twice. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. But there were also two speeches that I do want to highlight. The first one is Jill Stein. So Jill Stein was one of the keynote speakers at the pro-Palestine event. We're going to go to her speech, and then I'm going to highlight Dr. West's speech as well. By the way, anyone running for president, missed opportunity if you were not at this event. Incredibly missed opportunity. Again, over 500,000 people were there. But here we go.
I see power, I see justice, I see democracy as far as the eye can see. And I thank you. It is such an honor to be able to be here with you, to say to the world and to say to our criminal misleaders, we say ceasefire now. We say end genocide now. We say end occupation now. We say end apartheid now. I want to remind you that polls show we are not alone. We are, in fact, an unstoppable majority and an unstoppable force for peace, for justice, for an end to genocide now. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. We are that demand. And as another wise leader, Alice Walker, the poet and novelist, said, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with.
Yep. And I just want to add in here for a second, for those who are not aware, the establishment has also heavily smeared Alice Walker. Alice Walker is the author of The Color Purple, and they have, just tried to ruin her name. Just FYI. Guess which side Alice Walker stands with? You think she's standing with the Palestinian people, or you think she's standing with the state of Israel?
We are 68% in the polls. We have the power. We have the power to say to the AIPAC White House and to the AIPAC Congress that you are accountable to us, to we the people. Don't let them intimidate you out of our power. We have the power to be a force in the streets. We have a power to be instructing our elected officials what they need to do, that they need to stop the flow of weapons and money to apartheid Israel. We need to withdraw our advisors, our troops, our warships, our ammunition, and our weapons from the scene of the crime. And I want to remind you, we all have a choice as voters. And I am so, I can't say, it's beyond words. I had already decided to run as the Green Party candidate for president.
So for some of the people in the crowd, this was the first time they actually heard that news. So just FYI. That's why I said, if you were a presidential candidate and you were not present at this rally, that was a big mistake. Big mistake. But again, like I said, the ones who are for it, right, who are for pro-Palestinian movement, Jill Stein, Cornel West, Claudia de la Cruz, and Dr. Shiva as well. But for the most part, most of the candidates are against it.
Before this genocide began, but once it began, I was so thankful that I could use this megaphone that we call elections to actually.
And sorry about this. The
Empire.
It was live streamed, so live streaming on the ground, sometimes this is what you end up with connection issues. So sorry about that.
You cannot do this. And we, the people, are changing course here and now. They want you to believe that you have no choice, but you actually have many choices. And there will be other speakers here today who are also a principled, inspired, and moral choice. You have that choice, and we need to assert our power right now. Don't wait. I urge you to sign this pledge to stop genocide through our votes. You can find us on the web. We'll be handing out the cards. This is a pledge to say we will not give our votes to any candidate who supports genocide.
So you see what I was saying, you guys? Not giving your vote to any candidate that supports genocide. And I don't know about you guys, but I would not be supporting anyone who supports genocide, period. So this is why I say when people say you don't have no other option, you do have an other option, or you can just choose to stay at home. But don't let people fearmonger you into supporting Joe Biden because they're afraid that we'll get Donald Trump again. You don't have to support either one of them. And you know what? I'll be able to sleep better at night as well, too, knowing that I didn't support someone who supports genocide.
But we won't stop there because they would love for us to be silent and just disappear. We are also saying we will support, we pledge to support candidates who are fighting to stop genocide, for a ceasefire now, and for an end to occupation and apartheid. So with that, I just want to remind you that we have the power to change history. The arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. We will be the benders that moves history towards justice. And as Gaza goes, we all go. Gaza is where we assert that international law and human rights are the law of the land and the law of the future. Let's make it happen. Together we are unstoppable. Thank you so much.
Okay, so that was Jill Stein's speech, and Dr. Cornel West also made a speech at the march as well. Let me go ahead and move this forward just a little bit. I think I could do. Okay, yeah, there we go.
Like myself, comes from a tradition of a great black people who have been hated and terrorized and traumatized for 400 years, but we still here fighting, we still here swinging. So I'm here to let my precious Palestinian brothers and sisters and siblings know that when I think of where I come from, for every generation we have love warriors who were willing to live and who are willing to die. Martin Luther King Jr. said, I'd rather be dead than afraid. I'd rather be a corpse than a coward. We need courage. We need love and freedom in love. Don't let anybody lie on you and say that we here in the name of hatred. We don't hate anybody. We love Palestinians. We love oppressed people no matter where they are, any corner of the globe. They could be on the chocolate side of Washington, D.C. They could be Dalits in India. They could be landless peasants in Brazil. They can be indigenous peoples. They can be Iranians. They can be Iraqis. Anybody. This is a human thing we're here for. So when you hear all the lies that hide and conceal the crimes, remember what Brother Martin used to say, no lie can live forever. Truth crushed the earth shall rise again. I see it in your faces. I see it in your eyes. I see it in your hearts. I see it in your bodies. And oh, I wish you can see how beautiful you look. Isn't that the truth, my brother? Oh, yes. Beautiful you look. All the different colors and genders and cultures and sexual orientations and national identities. Why? Because you're here in the name of truth and justice, and we are going to raise our voices, put our bodies on the line, and yes, even go to jail and even die.
Now, this is something that I will add here in reference to what Cornel West just said about putting your bodies on the line. Cornel West has been arrested at protests multiple times. Cornel West has spent, look, Cornel West is a lot older than me. He's been fighting for this kind of thing like before I was even born. So when we look at some of these candidates, also, we want to look at consistency. We also have to remember, even in reference to Jill Stein, remember Jill Stein didn't want to be a politician. She's talked about this several times in interviews. She's talked about this on this show. Didn't want to be a politician. Even from day one, she was an activist. She was called to do it. So we have to look at, and you're going to hear this a lot as we get closer to November. I'm telling you guys, they really going to turn up the heat and say, you guys are going to have to support Joe Biden, or it's all your fault if Trump wins. Don't believe that. Don't fall for that mess. It's not your fault if Trump wins. If we actually had a government that worked for the people, and if we actually had a president that was willing to push back against corporate powers in the military industrial complex, that was not sitting up here and basically aiding a genocide in Gaza, we wouldn't be in this situation. Joe Biden's poll numbers will be through the roof. Joe Biden's poll numbers have been abysmal. So don't let them do that to you. As we get closer to November, you're going to see that happen. Don't let them do that to you.
Oh, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. December 17th, 1951, there was a great black brother named Paul Robeson. Y'all know who Paul Robeson was? Give it up for Paul Robeson. He went to the United Nations with a petition that said, we charge genocide. He was talking about black people in the American Empire. And it is consistent to be in solidarity with South Africa, because we don't have to charge genocide. We see it with our very eyes, day in and day out. those precious babies, the precious men, the precious women. What kind of world are we living in? America, what kind of country, what kind of empire? All of that barbarity, all of that bestiality, and we still have to march in Washington before the Capitol and the White House. My God. It's true. It's amazing to me. I think of Biden and Harris and Austin and Blinken and Sullivan and Kirby. I can mention all the names. And I don't speak in a spirit of hatred. I speak in a spirit of love for oppressed folk, which leads me to hate domination, occupation, subjugation, degradation, any form that loses sight of the humanity of people. And I say personally to Biden and company, you're not just enabling, you're not just facilitating, you're not just coagulating and cooperating with vicious crime of genocide. That makes you war criminals yourself.
Now you hear this? So I think I had clipped part of this, and I clipped part of this and shared it on Twitter. There's Cornel West calling Joe Biden a war criminal. So you see what I was saying before about Bernie Sanders? He's only willing to go so far. Bernie Sanders is never willing to go far enough to call Joe Biden what he is, which is a war criminal, segregationist president. He'll never go that far. Even when he was running against Joe Biden, he wouldn't call Joe Biden what he really was. But that's what he is.
Ought to be shamed. Who do you think we are? You think that you can suppress the love that we have for our Palestinian brothers and sisters? No, you got the wrong people. And I would say the same thing if they were Jewish brothers and sisters. The same thing if they were Haitian brothers and sisters. Same things as Ethiopian brothers and sisters. Don't get it twisted. We trying to have some space of morality and spirituality in a moment of overwhelming barbarity. And I can hear the voices of Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. I can hear the voices of Claudia Jones. I can hear the voices of W.B. Du Bois. I can hear the voices of John Coltrane's Love Supreme. I can hear the voices of Curtis Mayfield. I can hear the voices of Gil Scott-Heron. They're not just isolated names. They are forces in history that constitute our souls so that we can straighten our backs up. And Brother Martin used to say, anytime, every day people straighten their backs up, they're going somewhere, because folk can't ride your back unless it's bent. Our backs are straight. Our backs are ready. We are fortified.
And W.E.B. Du Bois, something else I want to mention about him, he actually wrote a poem called I Will Not Go to the Polls. So W.B. Du Bois said, this is way back in the day, okay? W.B. Du Bois actually warned people back then that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party were both corrupt.
We ready to fight. We ready to resist with resilience. And when they tell us that the claims of our South African brothers and sisters are meritless. And you see, they've said the names a number of times, so you know they got talking points. Meritless. Have you seen Gaza? Have you seen West Bank? Not just after August 7th. Did you see it in 1948? Did you see it in 1967? Did you see it in 2008? Did you see it in 2014? And you're still looking and all you can say is meritless. Biden, how cold-hearted and mean-spirited can you be? Got the nerve to go down to a black church where black people were crushed by some sick white supremacist brother. And then you know you're enabling blowing up mosques in Gaza, blowing up churches in Gaza, blowing up places where Jesus himself was born. I'm a Christian. I'm a revolutionary Christian. I come out of the household of Irene and Clifton. I come out of Shiloh Baptist Church. I'm influenced by the Black Panther Party. Don't tell me.
You knew it was about to be something when Dr. West took off the glasses, right? That's the key tell when he took off the glasses. Woo!
Don't tell me that you can see what I see and call it meritless. We'll never put up with that. We'll never accommodate ourselves to that. And that's why we call it for more than a ceasefire. We want an end to the siege. We want an end to the occupation. We want Palestinians to live a life of dignity. Am I going on too long? One last point. One last point. Because we're getting ready to march. Oh, yeah. But when I talk about free Palestine, and one of these days it's going to happen, I may not live to see it for myself, but I know I would have done all that I could to bear witness with every bone in my body. But I want that free Palestine to be a place where we're able to bring together human beings in such a way that, yes, we would be concerned about Jewish safety and security. Nobody's calling for the annihilation of Jewish brothers and sisters, but you'll never have Jewish security. You'll never have Jewish safety if you don't have Palestinian security, if you don't have Palestinian safety. That's what we're talking about. We want equality. We want equality. We want equality.
And with that, what else more can you say? I mean, that was a powerful, powerful speech. And Dr. West just, he lit it up. He lit it up. Called out Joe Biden, Anthony Blinken, Kamala Harris. And by the way, you'll never see them give a powerful speech like that. What? They're not passionate about anything. Think about it. They're not passionate about anything. This is why you'll never hear them talk like that. Hell, even Bernie was passionate when he was running. Bernie's speeches were passionate. But Joe, Joe don't know where he at half the time. Kamala can't do interviews well. Anthony Blinken always look like he's scared, as if somebody whispering things to him backstage or something. It's just, and these are the people that are in charge of our country. What are we doing? What are we doing? We got a lot to talk about. We will be doing call-in tonight. I'm going to take a really quick break. Eric, I think we have a couple of super chats probably. But other than that, I'll be right back.
All right. This is, we'll do a little swap there. This is the part of the evening where we give Sabrina a little break before we jump over into call-in. And you can do call-in on your computer or on your cell phone. Here, I'll give you a little heads up on the call-in link. There we go. And Sabrina usually always posts it. But yeah, you all had your having a bit of withdrawal from it all, but you got Sabby back here. Let's see what we got for some chats queued up. Just checking what's going on here and there. JB Font says, I was trying to go, but the bus filled up so fast I wasn't able to go. Yeah, I think you missed a good time and a good speech, JB, but I think there was a big crowd there too. But it was good stuff. Thanks for the super chat. Polis. Honestly, populists are only good at talking. Yeah, I saw this one go through from Me Want Tacos. I had lost hope in Dr. West, but he sparked the fire again. Thank you for sharing this, Sabby. And JB saying, yeah, damn, he brought it. I thought it was, I thought he did a great job. It was a really good, inspiring speech. And, the concept of someone like that, being a president is pretty exciting. So I just hope it can keep going and keep growing. What people who have heard me talk about things before know kind of what my thing is about, focusing on the money and the corruption. And he hits on it. I wish he would hit on it more. Like I think that actually I'll answer this one. Is Dr. West even on any ballot yet, though? Well, the ballot access is something that happens basically starting now. And so what you'll see is ideally, as we go through month by month, they'll be concentrating on the states as they hit deadlines. And if it's going well, then you'll start to hear that he's gotten on a ballot on this state or that state, and hopefully it gets rolling, for that and for Green Party. And the main thing is to vote your conscience and not vote for anyone who's pro genocide, basically. But yeah, I mean, what I'd like to see is this be wrapped up into something larger, into the money and the corruption, like why, if you dig down into why this is happening, right? Why can't we have good things happen? Why do we have this corruption? Where do we have this war and all these things? And I mean, the places where this would have to be dealt with is in Congress, and in the president. And the reason that's not happening is because they don't work for us, right? They don't represent us. The Congress and the president work for their donor owners. They work for the big money interests. They work for the MIC, military industrial complex, the war machine, the bankers. And so it comes to the question of, when you identify that problem, then it gets into what do you do about it? And then it gets into, you got to identify it as corruption. You got to call it out as, what are our demands, and so with something like Israel Palestine, I'd like to see all this energy be connected into that, into saying, why is it happening? Is because of money, corruption. It's what's our demand? Our demand is to make it, is to put an end to it. I think we should figure out as a movement how to make corruption become politically toxic, to where if a politician is corrupt, like every member of the Uniparty, every member of the Democratic and Republican Party, then they're unacceptable. It's basically, we give them no votes. So we'll be jumping into call-in. Call-in is where we like to hear what you have to say. And you can do call-in on your browser, on your computer. And another thing that occurred to me is that if we had, like, basically every member of Congress right now, I mean, you have to call them out as corrupt. And they'll talk pretty words sometimes about doing things, but they follow the money. They're corrupt. If we had any members of Congress that weren't chasing after the bag, after the corruption, then you would see speeches like we saw from Claire Daly and what you see from Mick Wallace out in European Parliament, where they call this stuff out. What they do in their speeches is what a representative that's not corrupt would look like. And that's how you know that every current member of Congress they're not representing us, right? They're supposed to represent us. They are representing the billionaire and the big corporate interest. And you have a similar thing on media. The corporate media is owned by the people they're supposed to be investigating. They're owned by those same billionaire and corrupt interests. And and the politicians as well. And so they're doing all this, the coverage with the caucuses and whatnot, and it's all theater, it's all a show where they don't. I would say that they don't really care about winning, or winning is secondary when it comes, like they talk about Democrats, like why are they not doing what they need to do to win? Why are they so cowardly and whatnot? And you always have to remember that, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, winning is secondary. The first object is to represent their donor owners, to represent their interests, the billionaire interest, the top 0.1% interest. And so they don't care what we think. I mean, that's the thing. Like we do, we have protests and whatnot, and these questions get asked, like, why doesn't Bernie hear us? Why doesn't any of these so-called representatives hear us? And it's because we're not paying them. We're not paying them like their billionaire owners are paying them. And when you're an employee, you work for the guy who pays you. So yeah, that's my big thing, is connected to the money and corruption. Yeah, let me show the. Let's see. We do have a call in. Sorry, I'm just kicking browsers around here. I do like one way that I've tried to frame it is what I call MCDS. Let's go to 11demands.org website. There we go. MCDS, Money, Corruption, Demands, and Solutions. And you can find this at 11demands.org. And if you're so view it as a framework for understanding how the government really works and what to do about it. So the M is money. You got to recognize that big money runs everything. If you ask any question of why that is happening, it's because of the money. You have to call it out as corruption, and you have to have clear demands about this. Like what are we really asking for? It is one thing that I see on a lot of lefty shows, is that they talk about the problems, they enumerate the problems, and they call it out as they should. This kind of education is crucial as a first step. But this is where the demands come in, because then you come to, like, why is this happening? What do we do about it? What's the solution? How do we get there? And so you identify it as the corruption, as the money, and you say, we demand an end to it. And then from there you flow into the solutions, which, it gets into focusing on the money. When you focus on the money, you and have demands for getting rid of it, you get into clear solutions. Because if it comes down to, the things that are kind of boring to talk about sometimes, what they are, the real solutions, the real fixes, like campaign finance reform, like regulating things, like regulating the lobbyists, right? Washington is overrun by these army of lobbyists. And it gets into, I think a constitutional amendment is crucial, because the Supreme Court is going to strike down any real kind of campaign and finance reform that has real teeth. So you need an amendment that says corporations are not people, money is not speech. And that kind of, I think that kind of amendment could be something to rally around. And in general, yeah, here we go. Terry gets it. Yeah. And whoops, wrong one. Wait. This thing's come up. There it is. Terry gets it. End money corruption. Yes. And we need to demand an end to it. And so, these things have solutions, and these things have ways of being dealt with. But we have to demand it. We have to recognize it. We have to recognize the core problem. And, personally, I'll be getting, I'm still waiting for one of the third-party campaigns to really focus on this as an issue. And yeah, Bad Cookie says, yeah, repealing Citizens United is a must. It is, but Citizens United was only the last of a whole string of Supreme Court rulings that legalized the bribery, legalized this corruption, and And so, that's why you need it as a straight up constitutional amendment to fix this. All right. We are on a little bit of break before Sabby comes back. Let's take a peek at the call-in. At the call-in page, which we're going to be transitioning to shortly. So episode 147, call-in libs. We kept waiting for if they were going to pull the plug on call-in, but it seems to be just kind of chugging along. I think it's because they don't really have to put money into call-in. It's just kind of there, at least not too much money. But yeah, episode 147, Trump wins Iowa in the West and Jill speeches, and we can hear from you guys what you think about that. One thing I've noticed is that Sabrina is like easily the biggest host on Call-In these days. I'm just saying, you're like the biggest thing on Call-In these days.
Yeah, not many people over there anymore are still hosting shows, but I still like to talk to people. They don't
highlight you, but I think it's just because they just don't update anything anymore. But they should be like pushing you.
They used to have a column there called Top Shows, and I was on that one, but they removed that one.
They still do. They just don't put you on it or something.
No, that's trending shows. Yeah, so they removed all the other ones and they kept up trending shows, and none of those people even do call-in anymore. It's really weird. Really weird. Okay.
Yeah, all right. So we'll transition over to the call-in. We'll see y'all in there.
Okay. All right, guys, we're going on over to call-in. This is episode 147. Trump wins Iowa, West and Jill Stein speeches, etc. I think I forgot to put the other things there, but we can talk about tonight's news segments, and also people just talk about whatever they want, actually. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. If you don't have the call-in app, that's fine. You can also join call-in from your laptop. Just click on the link. You can even call in from your laptop. So we are headed on over there. Again, guys, I want to thank you guys so much. We have hit 70K subscribers on this show. We're doing the damn thing. So we're starting off the new year with a bang. I will see you guys over at Call-In. Other than that, you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.